Wow, I think we're only going to be 5 parts in this video, in this book. Wow. We only have like 5 more chapters before the end of the video, or for the end of the book. Oh my god. Bindewald. Goodness gracious. My eyes were still squeezed shut as I tried to fight back my teleportation sickness, but I quickly recognized the ear-piercing screech that accompanied our arrival in Bindewald. It was almost nostalgic, maybe because I'd spent so little time at the Royal Academy this year. I opened my eyes to check, and indeed, Overlord was rushing toward us with 3 other women in tow. Now that's a face I haven't seen in a while. Can't say I missed it. One moment a magic circle appears in the garden, the rat next, here you are, Farlarm screeched. Just what is going on? Professor Farlarm? She's no longer Professor, Lady Rosemine, Handler whispered to me. She behaved so improperly that she was, made to resign. I could vaguely remember hearing about that. Farlarm's resignation explained why she was here in Ahrensbach. Plus, I'd already known she was related to Count Bindewald, but I still hadn't expected to see her out of the blue like this. How unthinkable that Ehrenfest nobles would arrive here, Farlarm declared. Unthinkable and unacceptable. Indeed, my sister, unthinkable and unacceptable, one of the 3 women echoed. This is the problem with Ehrenfest. Oh, God. It wasn't long before Farlarm and her crew were all pointing and barking at us. They looked so alike and spoke in such similar tones that I had to imagine they were all related. Probably. We aren't all from Ehrenfest, Handler muttered, sounding a little dejected. Then she whipped out her staff and wrapped Farlarm in bands of light. What? Handler had moved so naturally that I struggled to even process what she'd just done. Her squad moved with her, and in the literal blink of an eye, all 4 women were restrained. They weren't wearing silver clothes or anything of the sort, but the feat still astounded me. Handler looked up at the other knights, who were just as shocked as I was inside. Knights of Ahrensbach, you are much too slow to react to danger, she said with a smile. Her voice is gentle as always. Yes, having to restrain nobles of your own duchy might give you pause, but you cannot protect Lady Rosemine as you are now. I know you can do better. She really does match her duchy's reputation. Do you honestly believe these 4 are the only ones here who might oppose her? Handler continued. She then nodded toward the estate, spurring the Ahrensbach knights to create their high beasts and take flight. Hold on, let me just make sure. Okay, good. If she was the standard in Dunkelfelder, I would never be able to survive there. As cool and admirable as she was, trying to imitate her was beyond me. Goodness, is that you, Lady Rosemine? Farlarm cried, glaring up at me from the ground. How are you even here? Shouldn't you have died already? Stubbornness is anything but a virtue. Hartman stepped forward and stared down at the former professor. Oh, yeah, this is not gonna... He wore a smile, but his eyes were cold and entirely without compassion. I shall address you simply as Farlarm, since you have been kicked out of the Royal Academy. Pray tell, what did you mean when you said that Lady Rosemine should have died already? I see that not even your forced resignation was enough to teach you not to speak so improperly. Farlarm must have been deeply ashamed of her removal from the Royal Academy. Her face went bright red, and she gave her questioner the fiercest glare she could muster. Hartman sneered. If you were referring to the slow-acting poison that was smeared on our Bible, we discovered and removed it before Lady Rosemine ever touched the book. Ha ha ha! Ha 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 ha! You just revealed yourself! Ha ha ha! Farlarm's eyes opened wide in disbelief, prompting Hartman to broaden his smile and continue. Of course, if you knew about said poison, that would mean you were involved in the assassination attempt. We will need to investigate you more closely. Goodness me, I received a report and nothing more, Farlarm said, sharply turning her head away. There's nothing else I can tell you. Yeah, right. Hartman turned to Cornelius and gestured at the disgraced professor, now pouting on the ground. We don't have time to interrogate her now. Make sure she doesn't die until we know who gave her that report. I know, Cornelius replied, looking especially stone-faced as he pointed his stab at Farlarm. Oh, are you Rosemine's retainers? How sad, said one of the other women on the ground, staring up at Hartman and Cornelius with sympathetic eyes. Her hair color aside, she looked a lot like Farlarm. I find it so sad that you continue to serve her, deceived and ignorant of her true nature. She is a commoner shrine maiden who once arranged the downfall of my husband. A commoner, I tell you! A commoner! I was so startled that I grabbed my chest. The woman who erupted in a victorious high-pitched cackle was apparently the wife of Count Bindewald, the very same noble who had invaded the temple all those years ago. Oh, are there still fools out there who believe those lies? Hartman asked, stepping between the woman and me. A foolish knight was once executed for harming Lady Rosemine under that misconception. It boggles the mind that anyone else would cast aside reason so eagerly. Hartman, I said. He knew about my commoner origins, but took my hand nonetheless. Fear not, Lady Rosemine, that falsehood might have carried some weight when you were being raised in secret within the temple, but only those who had lost their minds or are blinded by their emotions would believe it now. This woman simply refuses to accept that her husband committed a grave crime. Goodness, how rude! I speak only the truth. Hartman didn't even spare the screeching woman a glance. He smiled at me again and looked around at everyone gathered. Let us assume for a moment that these rumors about Lady Rosemine are true. It would mean a commoner came in first in class at the Royal Academy 3 years in a row. Lady Handler, as someone who has shared classes with her, what do you think? Handler's eyes moved from Frau Alarm to me. Lady Rosemine is able to grant blessings simply by strumming the harp spell and turns face stones into gold dust just by squeezing them. No commoner can manage such grand achievements. What about someone with a devouring? Would they be able to? Lady Handler is right. A commoner could never be so talented at dinner, her knights agreed. Then they actually started to bemoan the fact and the amount of potential that was apparently being squandered. I struggled to follow their train of thought, but they seemed ready to accept anyone as a noble as long as they could play dinner well enough. Do not be fooled as my husband was, the Toad's wife cried. He endured such great suffering at the hands of Ehrenfest. At that moment, the Ahrensbach knights who had gone to search the estate returned with 10 or so women and children, all restrained. Lady Rosemine, these are all the nobles we found. The servants are tied up inside the estate. Their representative informed me. Did, something happen in our absence? Having caught us midway through our dispute with Frau Alarm's group, the knights all tensed up. Lenore stepped forward, laughing. This woman claims that Lady Rosemine is a commoner. Even if we humored the idea, would that not cast great shame on Ahrensbach for allowing her to steal its foundation overnight? Goodness gracious me! Frau Alarm shrieked. Lies in their purest form. Ehrenfest must be a hive of deceivers. And news that Ahrensbach's foundation had been stolen might not have reached Bindewald yet. But was she not suspicious that we teleported people within the duchy's borders? Evidently not, as she and her cronies continued to rant about this and that. Dunkelfelder's knights were losing their patience. They told the women to shut up, and that they were only embarrassing themselves. Lenore laughed again, even more provocatively this time. Not a single noble was able to find the Grucheshite, not even the royal family. Yet the gods bestowed it upon Lady Rosemine. If you truly believe she is a commoner, then your heads must be empty. The funny thing is, they're right! They're right, she is a commoner! Oh, this makes it even better, in my opinion, that she was able to get it. She shot a glance at the newly returned knights. Do these women speak for everyone in Ahrensbach? As an Ahrensbach noble, I would rather you not lump us together with these mad women, one of the knights said. Nobody in their right mind would believe that Lady Rosemine is a commoner. We've seen her close the country and border gates with our very own eyes, said another, before resting cold eyes on the tied-up women. Please stop regurgitating lies, for our duchy's sake, if not your own. Your frustrations and resentment must have festered while you were stuck here in this backwater estate, isolated from the truth. Do not expect us to sympathize with your foolishness. The Toad's wife glowered at me, trembling all the while. Even the nobles of her own duchy were regarding her with scorn. Tell them the truth, Rosemine, she shrieked. Stop deceiving them. I do not know what you expect me to say, I replied. I understand that it must have hurt when your husband was imprisoned and your sister fired, but you really must open your eyes to the truth. Only the Ob can place the kind of teleportation circles used to transport people. I truly am Ob Ahrensbach. Not a single lie had passed over my lips. Surely I'd skipped over everything about me being a commoner, but it was more pertinent to focus on my current position. That cannot be true. This girl is a commoner. My husband was the victim of an Ehrenfest scheme. Everyone, do not let Lady Rosemine deceive you. Frau Alarm added. Her protest ended there, however, as Cornelius stomped on her head. Don't... Cornelius? That's... excessive? You could have just bound her mouth shut or something, or gagged her or something. Don't you dare insult my little sister again. Cornelius? Don't worry, Rosemine. I'll make sure not to kill them. That's not what I'm worried about. As I tried to find my words, another voice came from the sky. Cornelius, what are you doing? Eckart, I cried, as he led Ferdinand and a group of Dunkelfelder's knights down into the courtyard. You're late, Ferdinand. We spotted a group of nobles returning from Ehrenfest and captured them. How is your health? I slept so deeply that you left without me, but I'm fully recovered as a result. I shot a glance at the knights under his command, then returned my attention to him. You, on the other hand, must not have rested at all. I was able to get some rest, Ferdinand replied. He took my hand and muttered, I cannot perform an examination like this, and released it. His armor must have been the problem because he removed a portion from the back of his hand, which he then pressed against my wrist, forehead, and neck. It's a medical examination, dumbass! Frau Alarm's eyes shot open. Goodness gracious, what perversity is this? People are watching, you heathens! This is a medical examination, but I cannot focus on her heartbeat while you were making so much noise. Silence her, Eckart. Yes, my lord, the faithful arch-knight replied. He shoved a gag in Frau Alarm's mouth and ordered her not to make another sound. I stared quizzically at Ferdinand as he proceeded with his examination. Is this perverse? Anyone who sees a medical examination as perverse has their own perverse mind to blame. It is nothing for you to worry about. You seem to be fine, but if you genuinely intend to join us in Ehrenfest, there is much there you will not want to see. I paused, but my mind was made up. As much as I preferred to avoid the horrid sights of battle, sitting this one out wasn't an option. I do. Very well, now what is this unsightly display? Ferdinand asked, gesturing to the people tied up on the ground. The nobles tasked with welcoming the Geeves upon their return from invading Ehrenfest, and Ahrensbach Knight replied, we have finished searching the estate. Ferdinand stared down at Farlam, whose head was still beneath Cornelius's boot. Cornelius, if you are to kick and stomp on her, focus on her stomach. We will need her mind intact if we are to read her memories. And the last thing we want to do is waste more mana healing her. Yes, sir. As I mentioned, we captured a group of nobles on our way here, Ferdinand said, nodding toward the men currently dangling from Dunkelfelger's hives. These are Geeves who are using black weapons to sap the mana from our duchy's earth. Black weapons? They were stealing the mana from Ehrenfest's earth? Ferdinand raised a hand to silence them. Indeed, rather than filling their spring prayer chalices with their own mana, the nobles of Old Workstock have been stealing mana from Ehrenfest. They divided into two groups and are working in great numbers to drain our earth. There hadn't been many knights among the group of Geeves, so capturing and interrogating them had been painfully easy. Grebel and Ildner in the southwest were attacked first. Ehrenfest sent troops there to reinforce them, leaving none for Gerlach, where a hard, fat battle rages on as we speak. Ferdinand explained, it was because we were needed in Gerlach that he had told us to meet him in Bindewald, not Stetson. If you had not decided to join us, we would already have been in Gerlach by now. I decided not to say anything. Matthias had snapped at me once already for suggesting that we rushed ahead to the border gate instead of waiting to rendezvous. Ferdinand continued, the attack on Gerlach is being led by one of Georgine's closest confidants, a man with an artificial left hand. He seems to know the area particularly well. That must be Grossum, Matthias interjected, pressing his lips together and squinting in the direction of Gerlach. Matthias, I said, be at ease, Lady Rosamund, I will not waver. How can she be at ease when you're acting so grave, Lorenz asked, and gave his fellow knight a firm slap on the back. He must have put a lot of strength into it because Matthias stumbled forward before fixing Lorenz with a glare. You don't need to fight this battle alone, Lorenz continued. Come on. I waited with a gentle, he's right, Matthias. Would you rather sit this one out entirely? I could never ask you to fight against your father, so please leave this battle to the others. I appreciate your consideration, but there are many nobles in Ehrenfest who were made criminals because of Grossum's actions, Matthias replied. Many lost their parents as well. I cannot back down now. Ferdinand gave a brisk nod and said, if that is your will, let us send the criminals to Ahrensbach's castle and then hurry along to Ehrenfest. Dunkelfelger's knights rebound the Geeves, this time with proper rope, before roughly dumping them on the teleportation circle. Ahrensbach's knights then entered the women and children from Bindewald's summer estate. I had to wonder whether the teleporter would even work with so many people on it. Ferdinand sent an ordinance to the knights back at the castle, instructing them to lock up the prisoners who were about to arrive. He waited for them to acknowledge the order, then turned to me and said, Rosemine. I nodded and activated the teleportation circle. Nen Loso Ahrensbach. Once the criminals were out of our hair, we started toward Gerlach by Highbeast. Because we intended to cross the border instead of going to the gate, Sylvester would sense us and no doubt assume we were enemy reinforcements from Ahrensbach. We would need to send an ordinance announcing ourselves as allies the moment we were back in Ehrenfest. There's less green here than there was at Lamprecht's wedding. Bindewald's summer estate had been brimming with mana, but from above, the rest of the province reminded me of a nearly barren wasteland. Ferdinand, I said, spring prayer can wait. We have more pressing matters to attend to. I know, but in a situation like this, it was always the commoners who struggled most. They must have been starving en masse. Bindewald has lacked mana for some time now. You should instead worry about Gerlach, which is having its mana stolen as we speak. As he had warned, once we crossed the border, I started seeing massive brown patches of earth. Across Gerlach's otherwise rich greenery, the province's mana wasn't distributed evenly at all. It looked like a Trombe had just gone on a rampage. There is a diversion. Ferdinand pointed at the clump of knights engaged in battle. They were wearing light violet and dark yellow capes, and there were bright flashes as the mana they hurled at each other collided. And there are the Geeves. Separate from the massive battle, there were several groups wearing light violet capes. Great patches of brown earth were spreading out beneath them. Oh, now you're getting it! Now you're gonna get it. Black weapons and chalices. Stroll told us he could not find the knights of Old Workstock, Ferdinand said. They must be the ones fighting our diversion. The diversion in question was the group farthest from where we were waiting near the border. I used enhancement magic to reinforce my vision, then squinted to get a better look. Geeb Gerlach's order of knights, distinguished by their dark yellow capes, were as a clear numerical disadvantage against the knights of Old Workstock. Lady Georgine riled their Geebs, Matthias said, analyzing the situation. Their skirmish might be a mere diversion to us, but to the Knights of Gerlach, it is a battle for survival. They must protect the summer estate beneath them at all costs. Sylvester contacted the Geebs of each Ehrenfest province and told them to prepare for battle, I said. We can assume, then, that Geeb Gerlach's summer estate is filled with magic tools and the like. Let us unite with them before it falls to the enemy. Ferdinand nodded at us both. Henceforth we would describe Gerlach's skirmish as not a mere diversion, but the main battlefield to indicate our acknowledgement that the summer estate needed to be defended. That said, on our way there, let us destroy the squads old Workstock Skeebs are commanding. We cannot risk them combining into an even more troublesome force. Ferdinand noted that he wished to make use of our numerical advantage when he could. He stared down at the growing brown splotches. There were 4 in total, all scattered around the area. He pointed to the one we would reach first on our way to the main battlefield. Rosemine, Lady Hannelore, and the retainers, thereof, stay in the air outside of combat range and observe the battle. Pay attention to every development in the situation and the number of the mana-stealing squads. But first, Rosemine, contact Ob Ehrenfest to inform him of our arrival. Secure his belated approval for Ob Ehrensbach to deploy knights within his duchy's borders. Right. Heischitz, for now. Capture the squads rather than eliminate them. In this era of mana shortages, there is plenty we can use them for. Yes, sir. Our company of 150 Ehrensbach and Dunkelfelder knights were going to descend on a small platoon of 30-odd nobles supporting a Geeb. Barring any extreme surprises, we would win for sure. Especially with Ferdinand on their side. Hello! And Rosemine, too! Dunkelfelder's blue capes all formed their staffs and awaited their next order from Ferdinand. Lord Ferdinand, I have a request, Matthias exclaimed, prompting the man in question to turn around. I seek permission to check the traps I set up with Lord Boniface. We must capture Grossum at once, but he is a scholar and a former Geeb, not a knight. Rather than being here on the battlefield, I suspect he is hiding somewhere in the forest. To check traps, Very well, but do nothing else and act in secret. I do not want to see you charging into battle on your own. Inform me as soon as you have found them. Yes, sir, thank you. Ferdinand then added 10 knights to Hannelore's and my group before swooping down with his company to attack the platoon below. Matthias watched them go, racked with anguish, then squeezed his blue eyes shut to hide the emotions swirling within them. Matthias, I said, I was born and raised in Gerlach. It was my home. I never thought I would see it so ravaged, nor that Grossum would be the one behind it all. Even as we spoke, nobles from Old Workstock were turning Gerlach into a brown wasteland of mana-drained earth. Worse still, they were being left by the province's former Geeb, Matthias' own father. The storm of emotion surging through the poor knight's chest must have been indescribable. His trembling, tightly clenched fists seemed to exude both anger and regret. We must capture Grossum, he said. My apologies, Lady Rosemine, but I need to take Lorenz with me. We cannot reveal the location of our province's management cabinets to knights of another duchy. If anything happens, use a rot. I will, I promise. Matthias and Lorenz descended into the forest. As I watched them go, Lenore said, Lady Rosemine, we should put some more distance between ourselves and the battle. Agreed, I must send an ordinance to the Ob. We ascended even higher into the air, then I took out a yellow face stone and spoke my message. Sylvester, this is Rosemine. I have arrived in Gerlach with Ferdinand and the Dunkelfelder Knights. We intend to support the Geeb in this battle against Ehrensbach and Old Workstock. As the new Ob Ehrensbach, I request your permission to act. No sooner had the ordnance taken flight than Angelica shouted, Lady Rosemine, there's another platoon! Some of them fled into the forest! Hannelore leaned out of her high beast to look. There are bound to be several more lying in wait among the trees. It is our duty to find them, Lady Rosemine. I nodded and enhanced my vision, and then leaned out of my own high beast to inspect our surroundings. We had no idea how many enemies might be lurking below. It's strange, though, she continued. Black weaponry or not, they should only be able to steal one person's worth of mana each. How have they absorbed this much from Gerlach with so few troops? That was bugging me, too. They were stealing mana for Old Workstock, sure, but a group of their size would never usually be able to produce such large brown splotches. Not to mention, I said, what do they intend to do with the mana they take? If Lady Georgine wants to steal and roll Ehrenfest, her actions here will only cause her more trouble down the line. Obs needed to keep their land filled with mana, so she would inevitably need to replace whatever she and her accomplices stole. Hannelore gazed down at the barren earth beneath us and nodded. Certainly, she must have other plans for Ehrenfest once she obtains the foundation. As someone who had taken the Archduke candidate course with me, she understood well the strangeness of our situation. She must only care about destroying our duchy, Lenore said, as just a small flock of ordinances scattered through the air. They had come from where Ferdinand and the others were headed. Everyone fell silent as we focused on the birds, trying to follow them with our eyes. There were 7 ordinances, Lenore said. One went to the main battlefield, while the others flew to Old Workstock's platoons. So there are 6 platoons? That's one more than I thought. Did anyone see where the ordinance for the 6th platoon went, I asked. In the same direction as the ordinance headed to the main battlefield. Perhaps one was for Grossum and the other for the Knight's Order. They might have united already. Lady Rosemont, several scouts from the platoons and the main battlefield are on the move. They appear to have noticed us. As the knights around me raised their voices, an ordinance from Sylvester arrived. You have permission to use military force. It was time to send one of my own. Ferdinand, our foes just sent out 7 ordinances, 2 of which made for the main battlefield. Ob Ehrenfest has given us permission to attack. The birds sped away, and a few seconds later, a deafening explosion flattened the nearby tree line. Well, that was aggressive, I muttered. He must have been champing at the bit. Actually, that might have been Dunkelfelder's knights, Hannelore said apologetically. They are gleefully devastating Ehrenfest's land. Please forgive them. I know this is a battle, but I do wish they would show some restraint. Ferdinand crushed the platoon with his overwhelming numbers before sending an ordinance for us to reunite. I decided to leave some scouts high up in the air while I descended with Hannelore. Beep! In the blink of an eye, roughly half of the Dunkelfelder company shot out of the forest and sped past us. They approached the next platoon with blistering speed, then attacked. Lady Rosemont, let us focus on reuniting with Lord Ferdinand, Hannelore said with a glance at her duchy's knights. I nodded and we rendezvoused with a group of Ochre, Blue, and Violet Cates below. Duncan Ferdinand and his knights were surrounding 30 hostages. They were using black weaponry and small chalices, Ferdinand said, shaking one of the chalices in my direction. Old Workstock's Giebs hoped to be made Giebs of New Ehrenfest once Georgine obtained its foundation. The platoon of bound nobles glared up at Ferdinand and me. Cornelius and Angelica protectively stepped between us and them. As you know, Ferdinand continued, the chalices are divine instruments meant to store the mana used to fill a duchy's land. Using them in tandem with black weapons to drain Ehrenfest would make it easier for Georgine to steal its foundation. Stealing mana from a duchy's land was equivalent to sucking it straight out of the foundation. I suspected that this would only inconvenience Georgine, but the chalices explained everything. Once she was a new object, old Workstock's Giebs would simply return the mana they'd stolen, becoming Giebs and nobles of Ehrenfest in the process. They even intended to move the citizens of their original provinces here. The land of an obelisk duchy cannot be filled, no matter how much mana is poured into it, shouted the now restrained Giebs. Do you understand the frustration and emptiness that comes of pointlessly dedicating one's mana to have the people who survive on your tireless work do nothing but complain? A new Ob in Ahrensbach will not save Workstock. We may wear Ahrensbach capes, and we are a separate duchy. The barrier we live behind makes that clear. If a duchy ran out of mana, its people would starve. That was the problem old Workstock was faced with. No matter how much its Giebs begged the Ob for assistance, their land was seen as a burden thrust upon the duchy by royal decree, and their needs were always put below those of Ahrensbach proper. Their only solution was to secure an Ob of their own, but without the Gruderscheit, the royal family could not send them one or open the foundation. Who could blame us for abandoning Workstock, the game continued. The royal family threw us aside long ago, and there's no chance of us receiving a new Ob. Lady Georgine gave us hope. I cast my eyes down. They had only acted to save their people, but that didn't mean I could excuse them. You invaded another duchy and stole its mana, all while wearing Ahrensbach capes. I am sure you had your reasons, but as the new Ob Ahrensbach, I cannot overlook such grave crimes. Knights, move them to Bindewald's summer estate. At once, Ob Ahrensbach. The knights saluted and then sprang into action. Retrieve as many chalices as old Workstock's Giebs have with them. Do not let them be taken anywhere else. The mana inside belongs to Ehrenfest. Understood. Georgine had given the Giebs empty chalices and exploited their desperation to make it easier for her to steal the foundation. Even if we didn't yet know the full extent of her scheme, there was no mistaking her intelligence. I almost wanted to applaud her. Stay focused, Rosemont, Ferdinand said. By stealing mana on such a large scale, Georgine has forced Ehrenfest to deploy knights here and in Ilgner. Assuming her plan was to weaken the guard around the nobles' quarters, she must be close to the city of Ehrenfest or already within its walls. I snapped to attention, the faces of my lower city family and everyone in the temple flashing through my mind. Ferdinand must have noticed how desperately I wanted to rush to their aid, because he shook his head and pointed to the battlefield. You cannot leave until our battle here is over. It is your duty as Ob Ahrensbach to capture the nobles of Old Workstock. We will also need Sylvester's permission to enter the city. Because your medal remains here in Ehrenfest, you could technically enter without his authorization, but neither I nor Dunkelfelder's knights would be able to join you. This was but a taste of the many changes Ferdinand needed to face now that he was being treated as a member of another duchy. He was still only engaged, but yet he wouldn't even be able to enter his own estate without the Archduke's permission. Anyone in his position would struggle to think of Ehrenfest as their home. No matter what happens, I need to end this battle and get Ferdinand back where he belongs. As I was steeling my resolve, a white bird approached us from one of the knights keeping watch in the sky. Lord Ferdinand, the platoon that received ordinances are now moving to reunite with their primary force. If we allow this to happen, Gieb Gerlach's army might be crushed all at once. Then there's not much time, Ferdinand muttered. Just as the second ordinance arrived, this one flew over to me. Lady Rosemont, this is Matthias. The traps at one of the cabins has been disarmed. There's no mistaking the Grossum is here. He disarmed traps set by Bonifacius, Ferdinand muttered, a serious look in his face. Grossum may be more of a challenging foe than I expected. I suddenly felt a knot in my stomach. The traps put in place by Matthias and Bonifacius couldn't have been easy to break. Rosamund, have Matthias come back to us, Ferdinand said. I sent an ordinance to Matthias and Lorenz, relaying that instruction, and another white bird arrived to take its place. Lord Ferdinand, Dunkelfelder has eliminated another platoon. Good, he replied. Straw, oversee the prisoners. Oversee the prisoners' transportation. Rosamund, once you retrieve the chalices, break through Old Brookstock's forces and unite with Geeb Gerlach's knights. If you are attacked, do not poke your head or hands out of your high beast or lose focus on your objective. I'll do my best. And the bell rings. Fourth bell rang out from Geeb Gerlach's estate, our destination, and we took the disguise as if on cue. The epilogue! Uh-oh, here we go. Whose perspective is this? Georgine had arrived at the Bindewald estate, a prime location for her to take stock of things. Not only did the province border Ehrenfest Skurlock, but it also been in decline ever since its previous Geeb's imprisonment for attacking Rosemine. Its residents thus harbored a profound grudge against Ehrenfest and his archducal family, a weakness that made them easy to exploit. It was during her short stay at the Geeb's estate that Georgine received an ordinance from Detlinde. Their plans seemed to be proceeding smoothly. Did Lady Detlinde succeed? Asked Seltzer, an attendant. Yes, Georgine replied with a nod. I thought we would need to wait another few days, but Lady Letizia must have reached her limits sooner than I expected. Georgine had predicted that Letizia would start to panic when her precious head attendant, Roswitha, disappeared without a trace. She had also guessed that the girl would turn to Ferdinand when her retainer search came up empty. Seeking help from Georgine or Detlinde certainly would have been an option for her. They were of opposing factions, and she had barely even socialized with them. But alas, not even Lord Ferdinand would agree to help her. Ferdinand was a member of Ehrenfest's archducal family. He was also Georgine's half-brother, but as she had already been married out of the duchy by the time of his baptism, the two barely had a relationship to speak of. They had exchanged greetings and attended meals and meetings together since his arrival in Ahrensbach, but those were matters of business. They could hardly be described as socializing. Still, he is much easier to read than Detlinde or Sylvester. Through her research, Georgine had deduced that Ferdinand was the kind of man who could make exceedingly cold decisions when necessary. It was a trait they shared, maybe because their minds were wired similarly, or because they had both grown up having everything they cared about taken from them by Veronica. Wow! They both hate Veronica! Who would have thunk? Which was how she had determined that Ferdinand would tell the frantic Letizia to give up on Roswitha. In his shoes, she would have said exactly the same thing. Georgine had also predicted that being turned away by Ferdinand, the last person she could rely on, would make Letizia desperate enough to use Leonzio's silver tube under the influence of a trug-infused sweet. Oh! It was infused with trug! Aw, crap! To coax her into going along with their schemes, he had needed only say that ordinances were still reaching Roswitha and that Letizia could secure her mentor's help by using the device he had given her. She would never have given up knowing that her head attendant was still alive. Head attendants normally started serving their archducal charges before the latter were even baptized. They were seen as a second mother of sorts, especially in the case of someone like Letizia, who had moved to Ahrensbach from Jawankel. Georgine understood all too well how much of an archducal relocated to the northern building would come to rely on her head attendant. She still remembered the crippling terror she had felt when her own one was stolen away from her. Things proceeded even more simply than we anticipated, Grossum said, his brow furrowed as he touched his prosthesis left hand. Lady Letizia must not have been a very keen nose for danger. Or are Lord Ferdinand's teachings to blame? Her shortcomings were likely the result of being locked away in the northern building so that we could not socialize with her. Bear in mind that her isolation was not her own doing. Rather than sensing the threats around her and making an educated decision, she merely followed the instructions given to her. As secluded as she might have felt, it should have come as no surprise that she never grew wary. I thought she would resemble you, Lady Georgine, since neither one of you has a mother to rely on, but I see now that I was mistaken. I might have been overestimating her. Georgine's lips curved into a slight grin. You would do well not to paint with such broad strokes. It seems unwise to compare someone who does not have a mother to someone who does, but expects her only to cause harm. Even now, Georgine saw her parents as agents of malice who had played a personal and very deliberate role in her misery. She had wished for their deaths on countless occasions. Her retainers and namesworn were far more reliable. Wow, she really does hate her mother. But then again, they had taken her role as Archduchess away from her when Sylvester was born. And then married her off into Ahrensbach. Once they had the chance. Wow. Furthermore, it was by royal decree that Lady Letizia was assigned to become the next Ob Ahrensbach. Georgine continued. Her position was unshakable, so why would she have noticed the dangers around her? Do not forget all the work I put into keeping her oblivious. They weren't from the same faction, but Georgine had always shown Letizia respect during social events. She also fed Detlinde the most indirect, ineffective means of expressing her spite for the girl, preventing any acts of open aggression. Thus, in the eyes of Letizia and her retainers, Georgine had seemed relatively harmless. Only when they were in her presence and their political rivalry became more apparent had they acted cautiously. Open malice is best saved for when one is about to land the final blow. By that same logic, Ferdinand was a far more dangerous opponent. Georgine had spent more than a year trying to lower his guard with smiles and other such niceties, but he had never given her an opening. Yeah, he's not going to believe that. They each knew that the other would go for the jugular as soon as an opportunity arose. Oh yeah. Lady Letizia is too close to her retainers, Georgine said. I sincerely doubt she has the guts to drop them all when the next need arises. Foolish reluctance is a common theme among coddled Archduke candidates. Georgine's thoughts turned to Sylvester and the many ways he had allowed his love for his family to poison his rule. Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly behind her veil. Lord Ferdinand is dead and Lady Letizia is being moved on to Alonzo Navian's ship, she mused. Still, I never thought this would all take place inside the Manor Replenishment Hall. As a general rule, bringing unnecessary items into the replenishment hall was forbidden. The fact that only registered Archduke candidates could enter had made it the scene of many a tragedy during battles for the Archduke's seat. Georgine had expected Ferdinand and Letizia's discussion to take place in one of their rooms instead. My hope was that we could wipe out their retainers at the same time. Because the silver tube had been used inside the Manor Replenishment Hall, Ferdinand had been the only victim. Eckert and Justice weren't even capable of entering the Archduke's office, so it stood to reason that they hadn't been poisoned alongside him. To make matters worse, Detlinde was the only one able to confirm and report on the situation. As much as Georgine wanted to hear from someone who could actually be trusted, she had no other option for the time being. Still, I must not undermine the depth of such a capable opponent, she concluded. I expected the overcautious Lord Ferdinand to be our hardest foe to eliminate. The man had once served as an assistant to Sylvester and continued to socialize with Ehrenfest even after moving to another duchy. He had been in a prime position to leak Ahrensbach's intelligence, which had made him a most troublesome figure, indeed. He had also come first in class each year he attended the Royal Academy and sorted out Ahrensbach's disastrous administrative situation without a single complaint. Georgine had desperately wanted to get him out of the picture before making her move. His troublesome retainers remain, but let us advance to the next stage of our scheme nonetheless, she said. I wonder, will Eckert and Justice reach Sylvester before his foundation ends up in my hands? We have control over the border gate, and neither their letters nor their ordinances will make it into Ehrenfest, Grossman replied. But perhaps they could reach him by high beast, but it would take them 2 days to journey from Ahrensbach's castle to the border gate. Then it would take them another day to reach Ehrenfest's castle, and that doesn't even account for the fact that our troops would stall them at the gate. There are no other options open to them, so they cannot pass through the border barrier without silver cloth. Lord Ferdinand will not receive a word about your plans. La-ha! That is gonna happen! La-ha! It happened! They know! They know everything! Well, as much as they could, anyway. Ordinances were unable to cross duchy borders. Maybe the retainers would send one to Ahrensbach's side of the border gate, hoping they would relay the information to Ehrenfest. But Georgine's faction was already in control of the knights stationed there. A magic letter would prove just as futile. They would always check at the border gate, which deterred senders from writing anything of critical importance. And there was no guarantee that the knights tasked with reviewing it would simply throw it away. And the teleporters to the Royal Academy couldn't be used without the Ops' permission. Indeed, they could rely only on their high beasts, which gave Georgine's group the advantage. Wasn't Georgine the one who set up the thing where Eckert and Justice could still go and check on Raymond? At the Royal Academy? Or was that... No, it would have been Ob Ahrensbach because he was already dead by the time they got there. So who set that up? I don't know. Now that Lord Ferdinand is gone, I suppose Lord Bonifacius is our primary threat within Ehrenfest's archducal family, Georgine mused. I concur, Grossman said with a frown. We wanted to draw him away from the castle. He rarely acts as one expects. Georgine gave a wry smile of agreement. Bonifacius thwarted traps as effortlessly as he breathed, and his existence alone seemed to unravel even the most devious plots. It made no sense. Any time he was asked how he was able to detect such things, he would say only that he followed his instincts. He was anathema to people like Georgine and Grossman, who planned every last detail of their schemes before following them to the letter. Not to mention, he was a one-man army. A direct battle against him would merely end in disaster for his opponent. That was why they had devised the perfect countermeasure. If he first invaded Ilgner, Georgine began, the Geeb there would request aid to supplement his mediocre army. Ehrenfest's Knight Commander will need to stay at the castle, so we can expect Lord Bonifacius to join the fight instead. Then, after a pause, we will mount a simultaneous attack on Gerlach, forcing Ob Ehrenfest to divide his Knight's Order between the two border provinces. A day or two after drawing blood fascists to Ilgner in the southwest, Georgina Grossum would cause a disturbance in Gerlach in the southeast. Considering how long it took to move between the two provinces by high beast, that would buy them more than enough time. Yeah, right. The Geebs of Old Workstock are rather easy to manipulate, Georgine continued. We can trust them to perform excellently in Ehrenfest. The Geebs ruled territories so deprived of mana that they could not grow their own food. They cared sincerely about their people, and that was precisely what made them so easy to take advantage of. The current Zent's inability to draw borders had put them in such dire straits that they had no choice but to cooperate. And as a result of my endeavors, we now have means of resisting Lord Bonifacius, Grossum said, stroking his prosthetic hand once again. The depth of your loyalty makes me proud, Georgine said with a smile. Let us obtain Ehrenfest's foundation together. This time we will not fail. The commoners made it clear that Ehrenfest's Geebs have been reinforcing their defenses. I expect their castle and the nobles' quarter are just as well protected. May Angrif guide you. Shut up. Georgine sent directions to the diversion squads to accompany her. They put on silver clothes and a cape to stop anyone from detecting her mana. Commoners from Vindewald were driving her in the others' carriages, as well as the carriage containing leather pouches and crates packed with the magic tools she would need. Using her silver attire, Georgine passed the duchy border and into Gerlach. There she moved into another carriage that would take her to Liesgang. Her driver this time was Lago, a devouring victim who Grossum had ordered to hide among the commoners. He normally spent his days as a merchant, trading in plants meant for dyes and medicines, and would use his concoctions to get Georgine's group on boats to the city of Ehrenfest. Oh, God. The caravan paused their journey to spend a night at an inn before continuing into Liesgang the next day. Then Georgine's diversion squads were spread across a number of merchant vessels. It was a discreet method of transportation, but also a slow one, as the boats would need to pick up and unload cargo along the way. The last of the merchant vessels should arrive at the West Gate in 2 days at Fourth Bell, Lago explained. Your boat will not depart until tomorrow, but because it will travel straight to Ehrenfest, you can expect to arrive at Third Bell instead. Georgine and her attendant Seltzer stayed in Liesgang overnight, disguised as Lago's servants, and then boarded their boat as planned. The two of you will share this room, Lago said, speaking authoritatively to avoid rousing the suspicion of those around them. I'll come tell you when we reach Ehrenfest. Don't go wandering around before then. As narrow as it was, the room would serve as the perfect location for the pair to relax away from prying eyes. Nobody had realized they were nobles, and with that in mind, Georgine gave her attendant a satisfied nod. This is a reward from your master, Seltzer said, quietly before holding out a black face-stone for Lago to take. The mana within him must have been close to bursting out, because he immediately squeezed the face-stone and heaved a heavy sigh of relief. You must not have found many chances to ease the heat inside of you since the new Geeb was assigned. We promised you only the one face-stone, but rest assured, once our ship arrives at its destination, we shall give you another. Consider it a show of appreciation for your continued service. Grossum's losing his position as Geeb and moving to Ahrensbach had cost his devouring servants all means of safely releasing their mana, more or less dooming them to an untimely demise. Now, however, Lago was being offered not just another black face-stone, but also a connection that would benefit him long into the future. The feeling that his death might not be so certain anymore was indescribable, and he knelt before the compassionately smiling noble women in complete reverence. Georgine accepted the gesture without question. It was only natural that someone would take a knee before her and started shooing Lago out of the room. We shall remain here as advised. Be sure to keep up our little act. Once the devouring victim was gone, there was nothing for the two noblewomen to do but await their destination. As an attendant, Seltzer strove to ensure that her lady was as comfortable as possible within their inconvenient commoner vessel. Georgine, meanwhile, had nothing but free time. Perhaps because she was back in Ehrenfest, memories of the past came and went as she swayed along in the boat. I don't have a single good memory about this duchy. Both now and in the past, Georgine had only ever felt alive when she was striving to become Ob Ehrenfest. Georgine, I want you to become the next Ob Ehrenfest. Georgine's first oldest memory was a conversation with her mother, Veronica. The woman was a strict parent who demanded perfection in all things, and she had made it abundantly clear that she didn't want her daughter to lose the archducal seat to Bonifacius' son Karlstedt, who was receiving an archducate's education. Under her cold tutelage, Georgine had learned to read and write with tears in her eyes, repeated greetings until she could no longer speak, and memorized etiquette while receiving steady beatings. Ooh, yeah, I can understand why she hates her mother. You are going to become the next Ob and save me, aren't you? Her mother had asked, sadness in her eyes. In response, Georgine had made a personal vow to work even harder to save her poor mother from the abuse of other nobles. Another girl, Veronica had moaned when Georgine's younger sister Constance was born. She hadn't even attempted to hide her disappointment and immediately neglected the poor girl. As her concern for her abandoned sister grew, Georgine tried to give the child the same education she had received, but the harder she tried to bridge the gap between them, the greater it became. Georgine hadn't understood why at the time, but now she knew that an Archduke candidate's education was much too harsh for someone without a hope of ever taking the role. The adult had simply allowed the misunderstanding to fester, not wanting Georgine to realize that her own education was much too strict. In any case, although Georgine's education was hard and painful, she got support from those around her. She received praise from her mother whenever she did well, and upon her entrance into adolescence, protection from Riarda when Veronica became too strict. She was also loved unconditionally by her Uncle Besenmonst, even though their chances to see one another were few and far between. Georgine innocently believed that as long as she beat Karlstadt to the Archducal seat, her mother would give her the warmth she so desired. But then Sylvester was born. Yep, this is why she hates everything. In the blink of an eye, Veronica changed. She rejoiced over finally having a son, directing her love and attention exclusively at him. It didn't matter how much he wailed or how little he tried. He was put first purely because he was a boy. Now, that wasn't Sylvester's fault. He can't help that he was born a guy. Georgine was confused. Her entire world was falling apart because of the birth of her younger brother. She began to worry that no amount of work would ever secure her the adoration she craved, and even considered the change in her mother abnormal and disgusting. If only Sylvester had never been born. Yeah, a lot of stuff would have been changed. Karlstadt had been a good rival for Georgine, despite having the advantage in both age and gender. He was the grandson of the previous Archduke, not the son of the current one, a temporary candidate put in place to compensate for the reigning Ob's lack of a male heir. It would have been a close race between him and Georgine, the Archduke's actual daughter. Georgine hadn't been baptized at the time, so she rarely spoken with Karlstadt face to face. They had a common tutor in Riarda, however, so information about him had been easy to come by. Georgine had considered beating him her long-term goal. He had been a rival she stood a chance of defeating with enough hard work. But the first wife's son, Sylvester, had forced Karlstadt out of the battle for the Archducal seat simply by being born. Georgine had witnessed a fellow Archduke candidate be reduced to the status of an archnoble before her very eyes. It was only natural that she feared she would be next, and this only happening because of Sylvester. Despite her alarm, things didn't go as Georgine feared. Veronica's main focus was putting one of her children in power, so while she got rid of Karlstadt, Georgine was ultimately spared. Like his father, Sylvester was sickly at birth. Then, once Karlstadt had been disposed, some began to fear for Ehrenfest's future and pushed Georgine to continue her archducal education after her baptism. So now Sylvester is my rival. I'll need to study hard. But no sooner had Georgine resolved not to lose to anyone than her head attendant Riarda was stolen away from her. It happened prior to Georgine's baptism, partway through her move to the northern building. Veronica trusted Riarda more than any other attendant, so she transferred her to Sylvester, her ideal next ob. Head attendants were generally seen as second mothers, but Georgine received far more love from Riarda than from Veronica. Having her most trusted retainer stolen away right when she was about to live separately from her parents seemed unforgivable. She cried to her mother that it was a terrible betrayal, but Veronica didn't care. You are healthy enough, Georgine. Sylvester, on the other hand, is terribly unwell. I cannot leave him with someone I do not trust. I can understand that. Because, especially since these guys are positioned to possibly be the next Archduke or Archduchess, depending on, who does it. And you don't want someone trying to get close to the baby and trying to poison him or kill him to get rid of him, Veronica convinced her husband to agree, and with that, Riarda formally became Sylvester's retainer. Everything was moving in the boy's favor. Everything. I wish Sylvester would just die. For the very first time, Georgine had the urge to dispatch her younger brother. He was the reason for all the unpleasant things in her life. His gender was the only advantage he had ever had over her. Yet it had been enough for him to gradually steal everything. It came as no surprise that she didn't feel at all attached to him. Once her baptism was over, Georgine finished moving to the northern building. Her education as an Archduke candidate truly began, and she was so busy that she visited the main building only once a month to have tea with her mother and report on her progress. Sylvester grew taller and healthier with each visit. He troubled the attendants with pranks and received frequent scoldings from Riarda, yet Veronica still seemed to think of him as a sickly child and never stopped doting on him. Georgine hadn't been able to believe her eyes when she saw her mother actively stop others from punishing the boy. If she had dared to act out, she would have been screamed at and beaten. Yeah, don't be coddling him. Why should Sylvester be the ob at all? He only ever pulled pranks and messed around. Even when Georgine scolded him and said that he needed to work hard, he would shout that he didn't want to rule in the first place. Then he would cling to his mother in tears, and she would criticize Georgine with a hesitation. Why? She did nothing to him. Do not damage poor Sylvester's motivation, she would say. The boy's still young. He doesn't need to work hard yet. Hello! He needs to actually learn. Just like what Wilfred was doing. He was messing himself up because he wasn't learning, and he was already in his baptism. Has Sylvester had his baptism at this point? There hadn't even been a time when she had snapped. You never dote on your little brother. All you do is complain. There is not enough love in you. Georgine was speechless. If everything Veronica had said about Sylvester was true, then why had she meticulously listed every single one of Karstad's flaws when he was the same age and still an Archduke candidate? Every time Georgine had gone to the dinner table to say her goodnights, Veronica had been criticizing him without mercy. In any case, not once since Sylvester's birth had Georgine felt anything resembling love for him. Her mother had said she didn't have enough in her, but the truth of the matter was she didn't have any at all. Each time she was scolded, Georgine would be forced to apologize to her younger brother, and when she eventually did, he would stick out his tongue and pull a nasty face. Really, Sylvester? How old was he at that time? He definitely needed a big spanking, that's what he needed. It was the expression of a spoiled brat who knew he was monopolizing their mother's love and that he would never be chided. Well, that was when he was a kid. Thankfully, he has matured since then. Would it not be in Ehrenfest's best interest for this rotten child to die? Georgine had to wonder, was this boy really a fellow Archduke candidate? Each time they interacted, her disdain for him grew. Her one and only comfort was knowing that the situation couldn't last forever, that their parents would one day realize that such a base fool could never serve as the Ob. I must keep working hard for when that time came. So Georgine continued with her studies, working as passionately as she could in the hopes that everyone would recognize her. It eventually came time for Georgine to attend the Royal Academy, and that was when her struggles reached a climax. She was suddenly forbidden from meeting with her uncle Besenwatz, the High Bishop, the man who showed her more love than anyone. And to make matters worse, Veronica had refused to give her any of the retainers she had desired, declaring that she wanted them to serve Sylvester instead. Faced with this awful turn of events, Georgine almost had a breakdown. I don't blame her. Her only remaining comfort, the one place she could truly feel safe, had now been stolen from her, and she wasn't even allowed to choose the retainers who would support her in the future. Why? Why won't Sylvester just die? I can understand her frustration. Going through all that must have been awful. But that wasn't Sylvester's fault. He didn't make his mother act like that. He was a kid back then. He was a spoiled kid. But thankfully, he's matured since then. Georgine's relationship with her mother continued to deteriorate, but her father recognized how hard she had been working. He knew that as a woman, she would need to take a husband from another archducal family to stand a chance of becoming the Ob, so he arranged her engagement to an archduke candidate from another duchy and made sure that her husband-to-be would marry into Ehrenfest. It was her father's support that allowed Georgine to continue striving to rule, even when she was driven into a corner time and time again. Then came the day of Sylvester's baptism when, once again, Georgine's plans were turned on their head. The event had taken place during the spring feast to match the boy's birth season, so the duchy's entire noble population had been present when Veronica proclaimed it the baptism of Ehrenfest's next Ob. Georgine had pleaded with her father, the current Ob, to take back the announcement. Unless they acted with great haste, the Giebs would take the misunderstanding back to their provinces. Veronica's rogue declaration would take root, making it all the harder to dispute. In response, Georgine's father shook his head. The archducal couple cannot make contrasting declarations in front of the duchy's nobles. I will speak with Veronica privately, then deal with the misinformation. Well, father does have a reputation to uphold. An archduke's reputation was his lifeblood, so Georgine accepted her father's response and stood down, a choice she would quickly come to regret. The nobles returned home under the impression that Sylvester was indeed the duchy's next archduke, and came the next academic term, Georgine's fiancé delivered a devastating blow. I was told you are no longer in the running to become the next Ob Ehrenfest. That violates the terms of our engagement. That's not her fault! Like I said, this is not her fault! Georgine begged her parents to save her marriage, to reveal the truth about Sylvester's position to her future husband, but instead they elected to dissolve it. Sylvester is guaranteed to become the next Ob, so why should your husband need to marry into Ehrenfest? Veronica acted with a smile. You should look for a partner from a high-ranking duchy instead. You are a smart and talented girl, Georgine, her father added. I want you to support Sylvester when he becomes the next Ob. He needs someone like my elder brother to keep him on the straight and narrow. To this end, you could even just marry an archnoble. The world around Georgine began to crumble. How could her parents say such cruel things without the slightest sense of remorse? Looking back, it was hard to say how long she had spent frozen in place before realizing the truth, that she would never be given a chance to rule. That she was only being allowed to continue her archducal education so she could support Sylvester, and that her life's work had essentially been cast aside and spat on. As soon as the pieces fell into place, though, she became so consumed by rage and despair that her eyes became hollow and her face entirely devoid of emotion. Do they seriously intend to put the fate of our duchy in the hands of a fool who refuses to work even now that he's baptized? How will they keep Ascendance together when its ob has no motivation to speak of? Am I not good enough? Did my hard work mean nothing to them? I did not endure such a brutal education for Sylvester's sake. I thought Father was supporting me, but was that merely an illusion? I'm assuming he was, but then Veronica just essentially threw, I guess, a hissy fit until he finally gave in. Dude, the guy's got no backbone for her when it comes to her. Dude. Or when it came to Georgine, I should say. Georgine started grinding her teeth, well aware that if she started screaming at her parents now, she would never stop. She balled her hands into such tight fists that her nails dug into her palms. It was all she could do not to take out her staff and unleash the fury that writhing about within her. I think you probably should have said something. Just get out all your anger at them. Tell them what you think of how they've been treating you. Even if you have to do it in private. Still do it. You gotta get all that out. They have to know how you've been feeling about all this. It was all for nothing, she said to her retainers. That simply isn't true, Lady Georgine. In a just world, you would have been the next ob. You worked more than hard enough to deserve it. You must obey the Archducal couple's decree that Lord Sylvester will take over as the Archduke, but we will not accept his rule if we decide he is unworthy of your support. Georgine's retainers took their lady's side and suggested that she educate Sylvester into a deserving ob. It certainly was true that she would refuse to support him in his current state. To begin with, he didn't want to work hard, even now that he had moved into the northern building. His retainers could always be seen chasing after him, and not a single day went by when Riarda's furious shouts didn't resonate throughout the corridors. Thus Georgine decided to give Sylvester the same education she had received from Veronica. It was much easier said than done. He bolted out of the room at every chance he got, and when forced to sit down, he would wail and refuse to even look at his work. I don't even want to be the next ob, he protested. If you care about that role so much, sister, why don't you roll? It means nothing to me. Then tell your parents that! Tell your parents you don't want to be the ob. They can't force the position on you. Seriously. Then die, brat. At last, something inside of Georgine snapped. She wanted nothing more than to kill her younger brother, who had seized the Archducal seat she so desperately wanted without even trying. Who had taken absolutely everything from her without a care in the world. That boy is not worthy of your support, Lady Georgine, said Grossum and one of her retainers. In fact, Ascendance would benefit from having him eliminated, and if anyone should rule, it should be you. That may be so, my parents have made their decision. What more can I do? You can expose his ignorance to the duchy's nobles and flaunt your competence in the same breath. At first, you would need an unshakable foothold and trustworthy allies. Yeah, as much as I hate to say this, she's got some very valid complaints from her childhood on how she was treated. But I mean, yes, Sylvester was a brat who didn't want the seat at the time, and he should have told his parents about it. And then they would have taken him into that. They should have taken that into consideration. He should have told his mother and refused to back down on it if he didn't want to be the ob that much. But no, he didn't. As far as we know, he didn't. Grossum went on to explain what namestones were before offering Georgine his own. Veronica had apparently demanded them from many of her supporters, stating she wouldn't be able to trust them otherwise. If your honest work is going unrewarded, let us learn from Lady Veronica's methods, he continued. She married the current Archduke to become the Duchy's first wife, strengthened her position with staunch, reliable allies, and started eliminating those who opposed her one by one. Veronica had mentioned on many an occasion that she had been scorned and abused by the Lias gangs from a young age. If one looked at the current balance of power, however, she was in an ideal position to take her revenge. The children and grandchildren of the retainers Lady Gabriel brought with her when marrying into Ascendance are expected to give their names to Lady Veronica, Grossum explained. I expect that once Lord Sylvester enters the Royal Academy and acquires a staff, she will expect everyone to make that vow to him. You should obtain their names first, thereby securing allies who will never be able to oppose you. It was a splendid idea. Still reeling from the loss of Riarda, Georgine desperately wanted retainers who could serve her without having to worry about them being stolen by Sylvester. Using my mother as an example, she uttered, neither she nor father could scold me for doing that. But first, I'll need to learn more about the medicinal arts. So that was what Georgine did. Back at the Royal Academy, she decided to join the Scholar course as well as the Archduke Candidate course, deliberately taking as many classes about medicine as she could. Then, as her expertise grew, she spread information about Sylvester's foolish behavior among the other nobles, sowing seeds of uncertainty about him, the Archducal couple, and even Ascendance's future. At the same time, Georgine asked everyone descended from Gabriel's retainers to give her their names, taking a particular interest in those who were her age. She knew from Grossum's probing that some were hesitant to give their names to Veronica, fearing her advanced age, as she persuaded them to serve her instead. It certainly helped that Sylvester was continuously embarrassing himself during social gatherings. I shall be the next the slighted young woman declared. That child cannot be trusted to rule. But as Georgine continued to secure more power behind the scenes, she received a summons from her father. He criticized her decision to start poaching names and the lack of support she gave Sylvester, then said he could no longer trust her to remain in Ehrenfest as its ally. Hello? Y'all didn't really do anything to help her with that. Y'all just assumed that she wanted to do this and that Sylvester wanted to be the Ob. No, she tried to help him. But then he kept on saying that, no, I don't want to be the Ob. I don't want to rule. If you want to rule, you have it. That wasn't her choice. She didn't have a choice. I don't really like her, but I'm getting an understanding of how it came to be this way, essentially. I can understand her anger and stuff at being everything that has happened, but at the same time, I don't really agree with her still trying to take the foundation when Sylvester's still trying to do his best. To that end, he ordered her to marry Ob Ahrensbach. I do not want to, Georgine protested. Why should I need to settle for being a third wife in another duchy? Be silent, Veronica said. You should feel blessed to be married into a greater duchy such as Ahrensbach. Because of the arrangement I made with our relatives, you have this excellent opportunity to enter its archducal family. I expect you to thank me, if nothing else. Thank you for what? First, Georgine's family had disregarded the immense amount of work she had put into becoming the next Ob Ehrenfest, and now that she was finally taking matters into her own hands, she was being made to move to another duchy to marry a man about as old as her father. She would spend her days as a mere third wife, existing only for the sake of nighttime activities. How could she accept that? Greater duchy or no, third wives are forbidden from involving themselves in politics, and thus had no power to speak of. I worked so hard to become Ehrenfest's next Ob. But the engagement was set in stone. Georgine's father had already agreed to it. Ehrenfest saw her continued education as an archduke candidate as actively harmful to the duchy, and wanted to curb her aspirations once and for all. Georgine was so overcome with humiliation and rage that she feared she might lose her mind. She probably has. Mother, father, I'm gonna marry Lady Florencia of Fremveltag. Sylvester had developed mana sensing during his second year at his Royal Academy, and fallen madly in love with an archduke candidate 2 years his senior. It was yet another foolish development, Georgine thought. Marriage existed as a means of strengthening the bonds between territories, and their sister Constance already had an engagement with Fremveltag. There was no point in Sylvester taking a wife from the same duchy. She's the daughter of a third wife, whereas I am the next Ob Ehrenfest, he continued. Fremveltag won't be able to refuse. I won't marry anyone but her. Georgine's first engagement had been overturned by her parents. She had pleaded with them to reconsider, but they had shut her down nonetheless. Now she was due to become the third wife of a man as old as her father. She had said that she didn't want to marry him, but her protest had immediately been quashed. Was it not unfair, then, that Sylvester could take a wife of his choosing? How could their father permit him to enter a marriage that wouldn't benefit the duchy? Sylvester had always neglected his archducal education and complained that he didn't even want to rule, but now he was proclaiming himself the next Ob of Ehrenfest. It was a shameless, unforgivable display meant only to secure him what he wanted. The time has come. Sylvester must be stopped. How did my mother eliminate those who tried to oppose her, I wonder? Georgine didn't care about the consequences. Her move to Ahrensbach had already been decided. Thus, she asked one of her name-sworn attendants to mix poison into Sylvester's food, the same poison her mother had used so many times before. Ooh. Partway through dinner, Sylvester spat out his food and fell out of his chair. Ooh. His parents' eyes shot open as the unexpected development. Georgine was just as surprised. Her plan had worked even more easily than she'd expected. Sylvester! Veronica exclaimed. Georgine took great pleasure in her mother's horror. How could the vile woman act so surprised when she had used the same method to assassinate so many of her foes? Her dearest son would die before her very eyes, sending her into the deepest, darkest depths of despair. Seeing her younger brother clutch his throat and continue to choke made Georgine feel elated. Rarely did she experience such pleasant emotions. She hoped to watch him struggle for a little while longer before he eventually slipped away, but the brat survived. Veronica had been too stunned to move, but her attendant had sprung into action and calmly administered an antidote to the dying Sylvester, saving him. Georgine's hard work had once again come to naught, dooming her to an empty future in another duchy. The day of Georgine's marriage came and went, and she spent her days in Ahrensbach, simply waiting to die. She had considered trying to seize power in her new home, but she took so little interest in the duchy that the thought had quickly lost its appeal. Her time was spent doing absolutely nothing of value. Perhaps I could derive some amusement from becoming the first wife and standing over Sylvester during future archduke conferences? This idea had come to Georgina out of the blue, and she immediately began plotting to make it happen. For once, her hard work bore fruit, and she secured enough authority to make Sylvester kneel, but not even that was particularly satisfying. Only by taking Ehrenfest would she finally be able to sate her hunger. Georgine was despondent. Her dream was a hopeless one, she thought, but then she received the letters of her late uncle Besenwas, the former High Bishop of Ehrenfest. Lady Georgine, we are about to arrive, Celtier announced, drawing her lady back from her thoughts. Is something the matter? Oh, no, I was just thinking that I owe my uncle more than I could ever put into words. Following the merchant acting as their guide, Georgina and her attendant made their way out of the ship. Discussion among the commoners revealed that Bonifacius was en route to Ilgner. They also mentioned that the soldiers at the west gate were on high alert, and closely inspecting anyone who attempted to pass through. Grossum's plot is going well, then. Bonifacius had yet to return, so it seemed reasonable to assume the city's soldiers were still on guard. Georgine determined it best to avoid the gate entirely. That will be all, Celtier told Lago. We appreciate your service. Can I ask where you're going? The merchant replied, his eyes flitting nervously between them and the west gate. At her lady's signal, Celtier gave the man a black face stone that will not be passing through the gate. That is good enough answer for you, I trust. Lago must have recognized the face stone as a bribe. He responded only with a nod before taking his leave. Still posing as mere servants, Georgine and Celtier blended in with the other servants, unloading boxes from the docked ships. Anyone who saw them with their luggage assumed they were moving cargo. As they slipped away from the west gate without issue. Oh, great. No one caught him! This should be it, the attendant said when they arrived outside the entrance to the city's waterway. The infrastructure had been made with an end to account, but like with the rest of this lower city, and would allow them to access the temple without passing through the gate. Fuck! Guys, get him out! Now! She pulled out and opened a scroll depicting the tunnel's sewer systems layout drawn by one of Georgine's name-sworn scholars. I doubt it even crossed their minds that I might resort to such measures, Georgine mused. Another short trek and the prize she longed for will finally be within her reach. The time has come for me to steal this duchy's foundation and make it my own. At long last, Ehrenfest is going to be mine. I never thought this day would come, Georgine said as she so elated that her red lips curved into a grin. It was third bell and the final battle was about to begin. Oh boy, here we go. Hold on. How long is it? I don't want to wait! I don't want to wait! I'm not waiting. The events of Ehrenfest, first half. Gieb Kernberger, the activated country gate. Just before spring prayer, a white bird arrived at the Kernberger summer estate. It flew into my office and turned into a letter, which then dropped onto my desk. One of my scholars took a moment to inspect the message before passing it along to me. Gieb Kernberger, this is from the castle. It was sent by Lady Florencia. My brow furrowed. I started to read the correspondence. It seemed that Lady Georgine of Arensbach was likely about to launch an invasion, hoping to steal our duchy's foundation, and ordered me to prepare. If we encountered anyone suspicious, I was to report directly to the castle. We were told to prepare ourselves at the very start of the season, but I see Lady Georgine has finally made her move. I pondered the woman in question. After being told to become the next Ob and undergoing an intense education, she had suddenly been taken out of the running due to her younger brother's baptism ceremony. Her relationship with her family had only continued to deteriorate ever since. Was her impending attack the result of a grudge from those days? Yes, I would say so. Or was there something else motivating her? I would think not. I would just think that she's trying to take out Ehrenfest. Several nobles names sworn to Georgine had been executed during the purge last winter. She had originally sought their loyalty as a way of challenging Lady Veronica, but that was neither here nor there. She shouldn't have had many pawns left in Ehrenfest. As perilous as the situation might be, I doubt Lady Georgine will involve Kernberger, I mused. She wanted to seize Ehrenfest's foundation, so she would approach the nobles' quarter from Arensbach in the south, or Old Workstock in the southwest. There was no reason for her to bother our province on the duchy's eastern border. Perhaps not, but we are ready for her if she does, one of my scholars said. Shall we increase the number of patrolling knights and double up on training duty? We could always send them to the Giebs of provinces bordering Arensbach should they request reinforcements. A decision like that should not be made lightly. There's no guarantee that Lady Georgine will not come here as well. I nodded, stroking my chin, that perhaps we should prioritize lending troops to the nobles' quarter. The Foundation's safety is more important than anything else. Shall we contact Lord Alexis? His charge might be needing our support. In other words, we could use my son's connection to curry favor with the current Ob Ehrenfest and his successor, Lord Wolfried. I don't know if he's going to be the successor now. If we were going to send troops to another province, it made sense to help my boy at the same time. I sent him an ordinance asking whether they needed our support. This is Alexis, he replied, as Lady Georgine invaded. Lord Wolfred is currently in a meeting with the rest of the Archducal family and the heads of the Knights Order, and we have yet to receive any updates. I will consult him as soon as he returns. I crossed my arms as the ordinance repeated its message. Alexis was a guard knight serving the Archducal family, so it surprised me he wasn't yet abreast of the situation. Could the Archducal family have learned something so urgent during their meeting that Lady Florencia decided to contact the Duchess Gives then and there, I wondered aloud. I suppose it could also be the case that Alexis was sworn to silence or deliberately kept out of the loop. It could also be the case that the Ob needed to leave on urgent business and the others are stuck in the meeting room, unable to continue without him. Perhaps they are doing what they can while awaiting his return? A most scholarly observation, I thought. But in any case, it seemed clear to me that Lady Georgine's invasion was imminent. If nothing else, I said we should position our troops in anticipation of a request for aid. I summoned the higher-ups of my Knight's Order and showed them Lady Florencia's letter. We were discussing our next course of action when another ordinance arrived, turned into a letter, and dropped onto my desk. What, does Alexis need our help already, I asked. No, this is from Ab Ehrenfest. But we heard from Lady Florencia only a moment ago. What reason could he have to contact us? It really hadn't been long since we received our warning letter. I couldn't even begin to imagine what the Ob might want from Kernberger in the context of an invasion. Oh, here we go. This is when Rosemary was wanting to leave. Okay, the meeting is when she had the vision of Ferdinand's last will. Okay. He plans to visit Kernberger tonight, my scholar announced, to open the border gate. The border gate, I repeated, for what reason? I snatched up the letter in disbelief, but my scholar was right. In simpler terms, the Ob had written, I will teleport to your estate tonight with my knights in tow, and open your province's border gate. You need not do anything to prepare. I only mean to warn you that we are going to use your estate. I smacked the paper with the back of my hand, bewildered. How on earth does he intend to teleport here? Do we have a teleportation circle in this estate? If so, where? I would appreciate knowing where the Ob is going to appear. And despite what he said, we will need to make some preparations, surely. Let us make amendments to the Night Watch and search for this teleportation circle so that we can clear the area around it. We'd never used whatever teleportation circle the Ob was referring to, and I didn't have a clue where it might be. Maybe it was behind a blocked door, or there were boxes stacked on it? Everyone must have been thinking the same, as we were all pale-faced. The estates were given to Gives were deceptively large, so our search would be anything but easy. Find the teleportation circle post-haste, I ordered. We need everything ready by tonight. It's probably carved into one of the walls or floors, and it might only be visible when it's active. Attendants, start searching rooms. Knights, search outside, and make sure to cover the training grounds. Scholars, search the shelves for any records of this teleportation circle. At once, the atmosphere in my estate became especially frantic. We had a mission to complete, and time was of the essence. Our search revealed a teleporter carved into the stone floor of a room now used as part of our province's training grounds. The circle linked to the Royal Academy could only move 3 people at once, but this one was so large that I wondered whether it was capable of transporting entire groups. The shelves and training dummies that had previously sat atop it were moved, and the knights used washing to clean the room. We really had managed to finish our preparations in time. Is the Ob truly coming? One of the knights asked me. He went out of his way to warn us, so yes, I would assume so. I wasn't sure when he would arrive. The letter had said only nighttime, so I took a short nap to renew my strength. Spring was already upon us, but the nights were still cold. So I watched a teleportation circle from my office with a guard of several knights. As soon as the teleporter began to shine, we sprinted to the balcony and descended to the ground on our high beasts. Black and golden fire swirled above the circle, and we arrived just as the figures started to appear within the maelstrom. Welcome, Ab Ehrenfest. I guessed, greeted the Archduke with a calm expression, but I was finding it hard to keep my surprise in check. He had arrived with some knights and one very unexpected young woman. Is that Lady Rosemine? I muttered under my breath. I would think so, based on the guard she has with her, answered the knight beside me, sounding equally troubled. The woman in question had grown so much that she was almost unrecognizable. Lady Rosemine had missed the feast celebrating spring, apparently because of a fever, but I'd still seen her during the gathering the previous winter. Even if she had randomly hit a growth spurt, she had changed far too much in such a short time. I was champing at the bit to learn what had caused such a sudden change in this woman before me, but Ab Ehrenfest and the knights launched straight into a discussion about the potential of teleportation circles. There was no room for me to ask about Lady Rosemine's abnormal growth. And what about these two? Did they not accompany Lord Ferdinand to Ahrensbach? Lords Eckert and Justice were among Lady Rosemine's retainers. I crossed my arms, realizing that I had just been pulled into something beyond my understanding. Should we not open the border gate? Lady Rosemine asked, interrupting the lively discussion about teleporters. Ah, right, the Abia replied. Come on then, this investigation can wait. As it turned out, Lady Rosemine was the one who wanted the border gate open. She had grown into such a beautiful woman, but she still drove the same bizarre high beast. It doesn't match her appearance at all. I thought a more elegant high beast would suit her now, but for some reason she was still using the shape of a fat grun. For all its advantages, I remembered she used it when transporting her Gutenbergs. I thought it would do her well to pay more attention to appearances. We mounted our high beast and took our guests to the border gate. It shone brightly enough in the moonlight that they would have been able to find it on their own, but I didn't feel comfortable leaving them to their own devices. "There's Ob Ehrenfest," said one of the night watchmen, peering down at us from the top of the border gate. He actually came. I was especially curious to see why the Archduke was here. We all watched as he made a step, chanted Aufnator, then tapped the border gate. It slowly opened, revealing the second gate that sat behind it, a rare, majestic sight even for the people of our provinces. Its doors appeared to shine a variety of colors, and not just because of the moonlight. As I gazed upon the newly revealed country gate, I saw Lady Rosebud climb out of her high beast. She formed her staff and said, "Grujashite," which made it turn into a radiant tablet. "She has the Grujashite!" My breath caught in my throat. Lady Rosemud was holding a book meant only for the Zent. It must have been genuine, so as the country gate wouldn't have opened for otherwise. "The gate's shining. Is this real? Then is that the Grujashite? Is Lady Rosemud?" Overcome with awe and unease, I couldn't look away from the gate, which had just been activated for the first time in about 200 years. The same was true for my knights. I approached Ob Ehrenfest, who was also staring at the unexpected spectacle. Would the royal family not consider this treason? I asked in a low voice, remembering the events that had come before our eyes and Regent's destruction. The historic scheme to claim the throne had been the cause of Kernberger's downfall, so seeing Lady Rosemud with the Grujashite sent a shiver down my spine. "You can rest easy. We have negotiated in secret for her to be adopted into the royal family. Not to mention we have this." The Ob showed me a courtship necklace. That is a courtship necklace! Okay! So Rosemud was the only one who didn't realize what it was. From the first prince, and explained that the royal family knew Lady Rosemud had the Grujashite. I was glad to know this wasn't an act of treason, but my eyes widened nonetheless. Rather than just becoming the king's adopted daughter and giving him the Grujashite, she was going to marry royalty. There was no future in which she returned to Ehrenfest. Immense change would soon come to our duchy, I was sure, but while I was at a loss for words, Lady Rosemud spared us not even a glance, instructing her retainers to get back in her high beast. "Well," she said, "I'm going. I will return with Ferdinand." "Hold it, Rosemud," the Ob interjected. "Take this. I got it from Prince Sigiswald. He said to wear it no matter what to prove you're acting with the royal family's permission." Ob Ehrenfest held out the courtship magic tool, a golden necklace embedded with face stones of 6 elements. Lady Rosemud accepted it without any fuss, then climbed into her high beast and entered the country gate through its open roof. The Ob and his knights followed suit. I attempted to join them with my retinue, but a barrier kept us from getting too close to the gate. Lady Rosemud waved at us, then made her Grujashite shine and said, "Kursluso Dunkelfelger." The gate's teleportation circle rose into the air, shining with the light of every element before starting to rotate. Then the magic circle beneath it activated as it spurred on by the light. "Take care of Ferdinand for me, Rosemud," the Ob shouted. As soon as Lady Rosemud was gone, the triangular roof started to close as though it knew its job was done. Something I'd only ever read about in history books was happening before my very eyes. My men rejoiced over the opening of the country gate and the mission to rescue Lord Ferdinand, but I couldn't help feeling bitter inside. Lady Rosemud's adoption into the royal family would allow her to give the Zent her Grujashite without being executed for treason. It was ideal for her and for Jurgen Schmidt. I really wanted her to become the next Ob Ehrenfest, but I suppose that's out of the question now. Yeah, I think you might have Charlotte as the next Archduchess. As a Geeb, I considered that a great shame, but it wasn't my main concern. I was far more worried about how Ehrenfest and this archducal family would proceed once Lady Rosemud was gone. For her to have accepted a courtship magic tool from the first prince, her engagement to Lord Wolfried must have been close to being cancelled. I suspected that the Archduke and other key figures had already spent a lot of time discussing their next moves behind closed doors. Yep. And what about Lord Wolfried? Surely he hasn't forgotten the black mark in his reputation. What does he intend to do once he's no longer engaged to Lady Rosemud? I watched the Ob's back as he closed the border gate. He had been so obstinate about Lord Wolfried taking the next archducal seat that he had disregarded a crime that would have easily warranted the boy's disinheritance and subsequently arranged his engagement to Lady Rosemud. Alexis had told me that the young boy was no longer being trained as an archduke because of a falling out with Lord Bonifacius, so losing his connection to Lady Rosemud on top of that would make it nearly impossible for him to become the next Ob. I wonder, will Lord Wolfried remain a member of the archducal family? Does the royal family intend to give him a reparation payment of some kind to make up for their taking Lady Rosemud away? How will this impact Alexis' future as his retainer? Lady Rosemud had used the Grujashite to open a country gate and then teleported to another duchy to fight a war. It would without a doubt be considered a momentous turning point in the history of our duchy, but with neither her fiancé Wilfrid nor his retainer Alexis here to witness it, I couldn't help but worry about his future. That said, I didn't want to spoil the joy and enthusiasm everyone was feeling. I simply watched as the border gate closed, unable to demand any answers from the Archduke. We get Bridget on this one. Bridget Ilgner's battle. Bridget, this is Halford. Halfred, could you come to my office? I cocked my head at the ordinance that had arrived for me. It had been quite a while since my brother Gabe Ilgner had made such a request. My marriage to Victor and the continued growth of the printing industry meant our province's noble population was growing steadily, and there was less of a need for me to make these visits. My last summons had been when we were sending a large package of fade paper to Lady Rosebud. Has she asked for more? I murmured. My mother smiled and waved a hand at me. We had been embroidering together in the playroom. It must be urgent for him to have sent you an ordinance. Let me watch over Lila Rose while you're gone. Oh, she had a baby! Yes! She had a baby! So cute! I gazed upon my napping daughter while putting away my needles and thread. Please do, Mother. I only hope she will continue to sleep peacefully. Leaving my 18-month-old daughter to my mother. 18 months old! So, a year and a half old. I briskly made for my brother's office. He must have heard my footsteps because Volk, a former Grey Priest, stepped out to welcome me. My brother summoned me, I said. Will you tell him I'm here? Go on inside, he's already waiting for you. Volk opened the door for me, so I continued into the Gabe's office. My brother and my husband were inside knitting their brows as they inspected a letter. You wish to see me, I said. This is a message from Lady Florencia. It seems safe to assume that the other Gabes received it as well. I read the letter. It warned that Lady Georgine of Arensbach was most likely about to invade Ehrenfest in an attempt to steal its foundation and asked us to strengthen our watch. If we noticed anything suspicious, we were supposed to send a report to the castle. If you remember, we received similar orders at the start of the season. My brother said. I was wondering how we should respond to them this time. We were making rejuvenation potions in case a battle started, but Ilgner had always been a province of very few knights. There wasn't much we could do to prepare for an invasion. My brother continued, the letter says that an attack is a foregone conclusion, but I suspect we have little to be concerned about. Nobody who intends to steal our duchy's foundational magic would go out of their way to target Ilgner. Wrong! Only a fraction of our province bordered Arensbach, and while the printing industry was steadily increasing our wealth, we didn't have much else that a would-be conqueror would want. We were also a far distance from the castle and its foundation, and an attack on us would risk aggravating Fernbeltag, with whom we shared most of our border. Not to mention, Ehrenfest would notice if nobles from another duchy crossed the border, my brother continued. Could we not just wait until we receive word that the invasion has begun? For now, let us increase our watch as advised. Focusing in particular on our border, I replied. How about 2 passes at noon and at night? I would rather not resort to such means, but we do not have a choice in the matter. Arensbach's land was running out of mana, so its starving commoners often trespassed on our mountains to steal food. Increasing our guard along the border would require us to force them back. My heart goes out to the commoners, but our hands are tied, Volk said. The Ob might even chastise us for having overlooked them until now. Besides, their hunger problem is for Arensbach's temple and archducal family to solve, not us. Volk had been raised in the temple, yet he was disregarding commoners without a second thought. My brother and I stared at him, shocked. But he just continued with a slight smile. It should come as no surprise that a change in the political climate would impact our relationship with the commoners of other duchies. For the sake of our province, we must not prioritize their needs over the archducal family's wishes. This might be a good time to start gathering intelligence from the merchants. Those who deal in lumber have an especially wide reach. Volk and Victor agreed that our best option right now was to simply strengthen our watch, considering our natural inclination to paper-making our province's main source of income above all else. We didn't want to spend potentially months on full alert, awaiting an invasion that wasn't even guaranteed to happen. Informed that another ordinance. Before my brother could state his plans for the few nights Ilgner had at his disposal, another white bird appeared. We all assumed it was for him, but it landed on my arm instead. This is Rosemine. I stared intently at the ordinance. Lady Rosemine must have recovered from her fever, which had rendered her too unwell to even attend the feast celebrating spring. I could tell from her voice alone that she was growing up. She sounded a lot more mature than I remembered. Lady Georgina has put Ferdinand on the brink of death and will most likely use this opportunity to begin her invasion, the bird continued. She has already moved to a location close to Ehrenfest. Expect her to make a move of some kind either today or tomorrow. We all exchanged glances. Lady Georgina was already at our duchy's border. The ordinance conveyed the severity of our situation in a way that Lady Florencia's letter had not, and the tone with which Lady Rosamond spoke made it clear that she was concerned about us. She even gave us instructions for the coming battle. Be especially careful of the silver cloth our enemies might be wearing. It's immune to mana, which includes stat weaponry and offensive magic tools. I would advise you to carry the same kinds of weapons that your commoners use. There is also a high chance that the invaders will use powdered poison, so be sure to keep your mouths covered. Assuming that Lady Georgine's group is moving in secret, they might be using carriages rather than high beasts. Learn what you can of any suspicious nobles from the commoners and stay in close contact with the Geebs around you. If you notice anything suspicious on the border, inform us straight away. My grandfather can mobilize the Knight's Order at a moment's notice. The Ordinance repeated its message twice before turning back into a yellow face stone. All we could do was stare down at it. This threat for our duchy is nowhere near as distant as Lady Florencia's letter made it seem, Victor muttered. I guess something changed. We should start these patrols at once, my brother added with a nod of agreement. Lady Rosemont said we can expect something either today or tomorrow. Our still pretty good knights through their paces, I said. They have been preparing for battle since the start of the season, but I've taken a long break from training while I was pregnant, and then spent most of my time since the birth caring for my newborn daughter. In other words, I was nowhere near as strong as I used to be. Every night would count in the impending battle to protect our province. To keep my family and our people safe, I would need to train as hard as I could. Bridget, as much as I relate to your enthusiasm, send a few words of gratitude to Lady Rosemont first, my brother said. She must have given you this information because you used to be her retainer. Years have passed since then, yet she still keeps you in her thoughts. He was right. Not wanting to waste another moment, I prepared to send an order on his back. Thoughts of my time serving Lady Rosemont came to mind unbidden, and the realization that we were connected even now made a pleasant warmth spread through my chest. Lady Rosemont, this is Bridget. Lady Florencia has already contacted the Geebs, but I thank you ever so much for your more detailed explanation. It was of great value. I shall inform the Geebs around us and the commoners so that they know to be fully on guard. Once the bird was gone, my brother placed several ordnance face stones in a line on his desk. Bridget, I must ask you to contact our neighbors. The gravity of the situation should come across more clearly if you speak to them as one of Lady Rosemont's former retainers. Lady Florencia's letter had made the threat facing Ehrenfest seem well over the horizon, and a message from my brother wouldn't do much to change that. A relayed warning from Lady Rosemont, on the other hand, would surely spur the Geebs into action. I got straight to work sending ordinances while the others began discussing our next moves. Lady Georgine's attack could come in at any moment, so there was much for us to consider. Gathering intelligence from the commoners was going to be important, but should we not first warn them against venturing into the mountains, Victor suggested? We wouldn't want them to cross paths with any invading knights. We have enough food and shelter to last us several days in the event of a siege, Volk added. Our next focus should be how to evacuate the commoners. My brother nodded. We'll tell them to avoid the mountains by the border until we know more about our situation. Something is bound to happen in the coming days. I sighed. They were all completely focused on the commoners. Yes, it was the Geeb's duty to protect his people, but the knights wouldn't be able to mobilize until they were given orders. Brother, how we evacuate the commoners will depend on whether an entire army crosses the border or just a small squadron targeting the castle. I said the same is true for our preparations and patrol paths. I understand that, but we still don't know how this invasion will take shape, Victor replied. He then turned to consult a map. To begin with, we are so far out of the way. Our foes are more likely to come invade through Gerlach, Wiltord, Gardon, or Griebel. It certainly was true that our province shared only a sliver of the Arensbach border. My brother agreed that Lady Georgine was unlikely to even touch us, but we couldn't afford to take any chances. You may be right, Victor, but Ilgner has the fewest nobles and the lightest guard. Lady Georgine might know that, and if she does, she might intend to use our province as a decoy. A decoy? Yes, as much as we can count on Lord Boniface's aid if something happens, we don't know how long it would take the Knight's Order to receive our call, obtain Eon's permission, and deploy troops to our province. Well said, I replied, and to make matters worse, no matter how fast they travel, it will take them at least a full day to reach us by high beast. We will need to endure on our own until then. I regularly dealt with the Knight's Order while serving Lady Rosemont, so I understood its operation better than anyone else here. Moreover, the more I thought about it, the more likely it seemed that Lady Georgine would use us as a distraction. Our warnings must have made sense to Victor because he quickly incorporated them into his plans. If promptly detecting and sending word of the invasion matters most, then yes, let us increase our numbers of patrols. As we expect something to happen soon, we can risk devoting more men to the border even with our lack of manpower. My brother nodded. They're going to be in a hurry to reach Ehrenfest's foundation, so I doubt they'll waste their time killing non-combatants. We should focus on minimizing casualties and buying ourselves time until the Knight's Order arrives. I rushed to the training grounds and explained our circumstances to the knights. Thus, we need you to increase patrols along the border. I will join you. Did you receive reports of anything suspicious last night? No, our knight commander replied. Neither last night nor this morning. I placed a hand on my chest, relieved. Lady Rosemont informed us that something serious is going to be happening within the next few days. Please have the night patrols exercise extreme caution. If our foes mean to invade in secret, they will do so under cover of darkness. In an ideal world, they will pass through while the commoners are asleep. Then we would just need to inform the Archducal family. Our province's knights were tasked with slaying Phoebes. Matches during their student days aside, they had no experience fighting against other people. Worse still, we had only 15 adult knights at our disposal. Even including the apprentices and me, We were fewer than 20 overall. I understood why they were so reluctant about fighting a greater duchy. Were that their plan, they would surely travel through Grable instead, I replied. There is no guarantee that they will target Ilgner, but keep your guard up nonetheless. Very well, if a battle does break out, I would rather the knights from the nobles' quarter do most of the fighting. I would also pray that nobody uses heavy-duty magic tools, and that our enemy won't cause tremendous collateral damage. Indeed, a battle like that was the last thing we needed. The destruction of our mountains and forests would have a devastating impact on our papermaking industry. Putting aside the chance of an attack, Lady Bridget, your presence in our humble order makes it much easier for us to communicate with the Geeb. Your assistance in combat prowess as a men noble are greatly appreciated. We weren't expecting an invasion from Frembeltag. Our duchies were on good terms, and nothing in Lady Rosamund's warning had given us reason to suspect them, so we focused our patrols on our border with Arensbach. None of the knights reported anything that night. Then, during our patrol at noon the next day... Oh boy, here we go. Has that mountain ridge always looked like that? I asked atop my high beast. One portion of the forest below appeared to be sunken, like an unnatural dent in the otherwise level timberline. Let us descend and take a closer look. Suspicious, I approached the strange feature together with the 5 knights on patrol with me. Our inspection revealed that the trees on the other side of the mountain from the Geeb's estate had all vanished. The ground was scorched and covered in brown splotches as though a trombe had just attacked. What in the world? I exclaimed. Why does more trees on the Arensbach side of the mountains vanished right before our eyes? Look over there, one of our knights shouted. I see people. They're wearing Arensbach capes. Waiting at the center of the blotched earth were several figures, each holding a black weapon. I couldn't help but gasp when I saw them. Those are the weapons used to steal mana from Black Fabies, I said. They might be using them to drain the land instead. The Archducal family's warning had prepared me for an invasion, but I still couldn't believe my eyes. I had expected Arensbach to march straight to our foundation, not steal mana from our land. Were they only marching through, we might have been able to watch from afar, but we can't leave them be when they're stealing our mana and destroying our land. A shudder ran down my spine. The destruction of our forest would have a serious impact on our paper-making industry and on the commoners who also relied on the mountain spoons. Our river could change once the rain began to fall, and our province's way of life would potentially succumb to natural disasters. There are 4 of them from what I can see, one knight said. Should we attack on our own? No, I replied at length. Let's return to the others, report our findings to the Ob, and summon reinforcements. We risk being overwhelmed if there are more of them hiding among the trees. No sooner had the words left my mouth than an arrow whizzed right past me. The invaders were shooting at us while retreating into the shadows. They've seen us, one of our knights shouted. Brace yourselves. Get them before they can hide. Be careful, their black weapons absorb mana. Surely there wasn't anything wrong with using offensive magic tools in this ruined section of the forest. We started dropping them on the trespassers, 2 of whom dispelled their black weapons to form shields. Keep them on the defensive. Those who dispel their black weapons will need to wait an entire day before they can make them again. The intruders wouldn't be able to steal mana from our land without black weapons. We moved for the attack, but then I gasped. There are other squadrons nearby, I cried. I noticed them with my mana sensing. They're coming this way. We were at an overwhelming disadvantage. Their knights were almost certainly stronger than ours, and they had reinforcements coming. Trying to fight would mean our defeat, and if we stuck around for too much longer, we wouldn't even be able to flee. Don't follow them, I called. Retreat. Keeping our guards up, we raced straight back to the Geeb's estate while sending out ordinances of warning. Brother, as Lady Rosamund said, we've been invaded. Not only are they attacking in great numbers and canvassing wide stretches of our land, but they're also stealing our mana, which we could never have predicted. Ask the Op for reinforcements. We can't hope to win by ourselves. I just arrived at the Geeb's office with the Knight Commander in tow. Victor and my brother were standing over a map of our province. I requested aid the moment your ordinances arrived, my brother replied. Lord Bonifacius is already en route within the Knight's Order, but with how quickly our land is being drained, will we even survive the wait? Bridget, give me your honest opinions as a knight. It wouldn't be enough to defeat our enemies. We'd also need to minimize the damage they cause so that our people could continue to live their lives. The invaders we encountered were only a small group, but I sensed more of them all over, I said. I don't know how well we'd fare against them, even if we mustered every knight at our disposal, and who knows how much damage they'd cause before our reinforcements arrive. If all they wanted was our mana, we could simply hole up in the estate and let them have it. The approach would spare us any casualties, but it would also mean complete devastation for the province. Those were nobles from Old Workstock, the commander said. Excuse me? I recognized them from the Royal Academy. The knights were protecting an Old Workstock Geeb. We knew the fallen duchy was in desperate need of mana. Its commoners were the ones sneaking into our province to scavenge the mountains, but the thought that its Geebs were invading Ehrenfest to steal our mana astounded me. If they're here at Lady Georgina's insistence, I doubt they're going to back down, I said. As members of the Geeb family ourselves, we knew just how frantic it would be if their land was dying and their people were starving, but it wasn't like we could surrender. We're at an overwhelming numerical disadvantage against Arensbach and Workstock. It won't be long before the two greater duchies crush us underfoot, the Knight Commander said with a heavy sigh. Still, no matter how bad our situation might be or how reckless this might seem, we will need to fight tooth and nail until Lord Bonifatius arrives with reinforcements. I only hope we can spare the young ones. I refuse to stay on the sidelines, I protested. How could we not use our entire force when our people are in danger? Wait, Bridget, the Victor interjected, the blood draining from his face. You aren't a knight anymore. You're a mother and a member of the Geep family. For our daughter's sake, please don't take part in this battle. The Knight Commander has deemed it so perilous. You've been out of training for a while now because of your commitment to Lilyrose. You will be in more danger than any of the other knights. I understood why he was so concerned, but that didn't change anything. I wasn't going to concede. I am a mother, a member of the Geep family, and a knight. The very suggestion that I should step aside instead of protecting my home is unthinkable. Imagine what my non-participation would do to morale. But I am going to be in danger, but so is every other knight. It was for the sake of this province that I resigned from Lady Rosamund's service when we got married. I will not stand down when Ilgnar's future is at stake. Lady Rosamund still cared for me, even now that I was no longer in her service. She had given our papermaking industry a tremendous amount of support, and even contacted me directly to warn us of Arensbach's invasion. Her assistance was an immense boon, considering how little time I'd actually spent as her retainer. Not joining the action would make me an embarrassment of a knight. A threat to our home is a threat to our daughter, I continued. Lila Rose has you, my brother, and my mother to raise her in my stead. Our knights, on the other hand, have no one who can replace me. That's why I'm entrusting her to you, Victor. Now please let me go. Victor turned to my brother, his face a picture of anguish, but my brother shook his head in response. Forgive me, Victor. As the Geeb, I must use all the knights I can get. Now, not to mention, what would those putting their lives on the line think if they discovered I was prioritizing my sister's safety over the fate of our province? He turned to me, Bridget, if you wish to protect Ilgnar, I will respect your decision, but just don't do anything unreasonable. Victor hung his head and sighed. Bridget, you truly are too much of a knight for your own good. I understand your pride and your desire to protect your home, but don't forget that we have a daughter, okay? And don't put yourself in more danger than you need to. Our focus right now is buying time, so stay alert and keep a close eye on the battlefield. Upon seeing my husband relent, the Knight Commander shook his head and gave an exasperated smile. Lady Bridget, do not underestimate our concern for you. We want to make it through to the other side of this battle with as few casualties as possible. Victor is right that buying time is our main focus, so we should aim to make our opponents dispel their black weapons. We will attack their groups one by one with the full might of our military. As we discussed ways to dispel the God of Darkness's blessing and what magic tools we would need to use, an ordnance flew into the room. This is Bonifatius. The Ob has granted us permission to teleport. You expect us there at 5th bell. Clear the space by the teleporter in your estate's front garden and ensure your remaining knights are ready to sortie. We're setting out as soon as I arrive. I couldn't believe my ears. Not even when the message was delivered the third time. He's coming here at 5th bell? So today? And with a nice order using a teleporter? We had discovered the invaders after lunch during our noon patrol and then hurried to the estate to inform my brother. We hadn't even shared the news with our knights yet, so how are we already being sent reinforcements? It's almost 5th bell now. We need to find that teleporter. Where on earth is the estate's front garden? Calm down, Lord Helfried. It must surely be at the front of the estate. Lady Bridget, we must inform our knights. We aren't ready yet to sortie. In an instant, the solemn resolve hanging over the room was completely blown away. We needed to prepare to welcome the knight's order and ensure that our recently returned patrol was ready to charge back into battle. Just as the ordnance had said, at 5th bell on the dot, a magic circle appeared in the estate's front garden. The black and golden flames, emblematic of a teleporter, roared to life, and a large group appeared within them. The circle used when traveling to and from the Royal Academy could only move 3 people at a time, but I counted at least 50 in front of us right now. Once the flames had disappeared, Lord Bonifatius and several rows of knights marched off of the teleportation circle. The others who had just arrived, about a dozen in total, remained in place. Ehrenfest, my brother yelped. He had respected reinforcements, not a visit from the Archduke of all people. Wow! Sylvester, what are you doing here? You had to be in town protecting the Foundation! What are you doing? Oh, okay. Upon seeing our astonishment, the Ob waved a hand at us and said, Be at ease. I'm only here because the teleporter wouldn't have worked without me. I'll be gone again before you know it. Ehrenfest, my brother said, I cannot thank you enough for providing these reinforcements so quickly. I did not even know there was a teleportation circle outside of my estate. Ob gave a brisk nod. I wasn't aware of the circles either. It was Rosamund who brought them to my attention. She learned about them from some old document, apparently. I imagine you're aware that she reads the Bible and other ancient texts to review rituals and what have you. This is the first time in forever the circles have actually been used. Lady Rosamund? If not for her, this teleportation circle would never have been found, and Lord Bonifacius wouldn't have arrived so suddenly to help us. Just how much do we owe the young woman? Gabe Ilgner, this is as many reinforcements as Ehrenfest can provide right now, the Ob said. Then he gestured to the dozens still standing on the teleporter. These scholars have been tasked with activating the magic circle. They are not to be lumped in with the knights. Now, protect your province. Leaving the Archduke's departure to my brother, I went to see Lord Bonifacius, who was partway through instructing the knights. Half of our lot used up mana to teleport us here. They won't join us in the coming battle and will instead stay behind to serve as guards and replenish themselves. Now, who's currently in charge of Ilgner's knights? I need to know more about our situation. Lord Bonifacius, I said, allow me to report as a member of the Geeb family. We discovered the intruders during our new patrol. Ah, Bridget, it's been a while. It would normally have fallen to our Knights commander to deliver this information, but he had asked me to take over in case his nerves caused him to offend the Archducal family. I had trained under Lord Bonifacius while serving as Lady Rosemine's guard knight, so I wasn't all that tense about speaking with him. I see, he said after listening to more of my report. Black weapons certainly are troublesome. Not only do they steal mana from the land, they also turn our mana attacks against us. We should use the same weapons we prepared to counter Aronsbach's Silvercloth, which reminds me, did you see anyone wearing any? I shook my head. We suspect they saw no point in it since they were using black weapons to steal our mana. The Ob didn't send some nobles pass through the duchy border. Chances are they have some. Lord Bonifacius paused and thought, then nodded. Getting our enemies to dispel their weaponry is a good place to start. We've got it on good authority that the Geebs might be storing the mana they're stealing in small chalices. If we can steal those chalices, we should be able to enrich your land again. That was more intelligence from Lady Rosemine, I suspected. I recalled the days I had spent accompanying her to religious ceremonies. The small chalices were divine instruments used to fill the land with mana, but I could easily see someone malicious using them to steal mana instead. Having acquired the information he'd wanted, Lord Bonifacius said, let's go, and marched off with half the knights. The other half stayed behind and drank rejuvenation potions. Ilgner's in good hands. The battle had just begun, and we were so far from the end. But seeing Lord Bonifacius filled me with confidence. Now that he was with us, I could somehow tell that everything was going to be okay. First, we needed to secure those chalices. That mana was bestowed upon us by my lady and the people of the temple. They were around here, Lord Bonifacius. More of the land has been drained. Indeed, upon our arrival at the border, we'd come across an even more brown earth than I'd seen before. The sight frustrated me immensely. Can anyone sense their mana? Lord Bonifacius asked. We should descend a little. We wouldn't be able to mana sense our target if they were too far away. We headed closer to the forest, and it was then that we noticed some of the trees disappear at the edge of our vision. There, I called. Everyone, Lord Bonifacius shouted, follow behind me and steal the chalice. Oh, boy. Get him! Having barked his instructions, Lord Bonifacius blurred past us all on his high beast, pressing on alone. He cut in front of those attempting to flee with the province's mana, and turned his staff into a halberd despite being told to use anti-silver weaponry. Lord Bonifacius, we all exclaimed in unison, so taken aback that some of our voices cracked. He paid us no mind, raising his weapon high before bringing it down in a great sweep. Did they say Lord Bonifacius? One of the men on the ground cried. Why is he here? Don't stop, yelled another. Steal the mana with our weapons. Protect the Geeb. Scatter and retreat. Even from the trespassers' perspective, Lord Bonifacius was charging straight at them. They could only continue to panic as he swung his halberd with a loud grunt of exertion. But he wasn't targeting our enemies. Instead, he sliced straight through the trees in the direction of the retreat, causing them to topple over like a landslide. Whoa. Black weaponry meant nothing to wood. The thieves didn't even have time to dispel their arms and make shields before they were crushed under a mass of tree trunks and branches. Don't let them escape, Lord Bonifacius shouted once we'd caught up with him. The rest of our ambush was quick and easy. The enemy knights struck by the logs were heavily wounded, and those who had only been grazed had nowhere to run. We captured them all without breaking a sweat. The chalice! It's here, one of our men exclaimed as he stripped the captured Geeb of his equipment. We can return the mana to our land. Our knights all cheered in chorus, but this wasn't the end of the battle. Last time, the invaders had all grouped together to scare us away, but now they'd scattered in fear of Lord Bonifacius. Friendbell tags on alert, so the stragglers won't be able to escape in that direction, Lord Bonifacius said. They don't seem like threats, but they're spread out far enough that we should anticipate a long battle, which is exactly their goal, I'd say. This is but a diversion to draw away the knights ordered, although there are fewer knights than I expected. Lord Bonifacius wore a deep frown. There was no risk of such a small invasion destroying Ilgner, but it was substantial enough that our knights couldn't deal with it on their own. And because mana was being stolen from our land, the Archducal family had to respond. The invaders who had appeared at our border showed up in Grable the next day. Lord Bonifacius' analysis had proved correct. Grable has called for aid, he said. We will advance there while taking down any invaders we find along the border. Bridget, stay here and guard Ilgner's perimeter. Understood. Our new job was to take up posts by the border and forestall any further enemy invasion. Lord Bonifacius had opted to have several knights behind, but to be honest, his departure for Grable made us all uneasy. Rest assured, I'll give you a good vantage point, he said. Just guard the border and send word if their numbers are too much for you. He and his group then launched a wave of mana attacks toward Ahrensbach as venting their frustrations, devastating the tree line. I see, this certainly has improved our line of sight. They can no longer come in secret, but some may boldly attack from the sky. Stay on your guard. Lord Bonifacius was on his way to Griebel, and once again his conclusion had been proven correct. Invaders with barely any mana had come to our border at regular intervals, making it clear that they were just a decoy for the Knight's Order. Lady Bridget, a report and apprentice knight, said to me between battles, I was hoping to inform the Guy, but I was ordered to sortie with the other knights before I could speak to him. A lumber merchant who brought a delivery to Liasgang noticed some individuals who seemed a lot like nobles board a ship to Ehrenfest. Send a message to them now! As the apprentice gave me more details, a cold sweat ran down my back. 2 days had passed since the merchant had seen these suspicious individuals. Even if they had taken the slowest, most roundabout vessel, it was possible they had arrived in Ehrenfest already. When it was to inform Lady Rosamund at once, I exclaimed, but when I tried to send her an ordonnance, it refused to leave. What? Why? No. Lady Rosamund. I took in a sharp breath as thoughts of the worst-case scenario flooded through my mind. Ordonnances refused to fly when their recipient was dead. My hands trembled as I tried to contact Cornelius and Angelica, but both times the bird did nothing. Does this mean Daniel is... Huh? Why is it not going to them? What is wrong? They're not dead? They can't be dead. Rosamund would be dead. And that ain't happening. So why would they refuse to fly? Is it only because the person is dead they would refuse to fly? Or are they making it so that they can't? I don't know. Despite my expectations, the ordonnance actually traveled to him. His response was bland at best. We are on guard against enemy attacks. Frustration swelled up inside me. Here I was worried sick that Lady Rosamund and her guard knights had died in one of the many skirmishes comprising this war, while Daniel was being as nonchalant as ever. A voice at the back of my mind told me my anger was unreasonable, but if everyone was safe, why hadn't the ordonnances flown to them? The constant stream of battles had made me too tense to simply swallow down my emotions, so the next ordonnance I sent was overflowing of rage. Why are my ordonnances not flying? I have a crucial report to give. What are Lady Rosamund, Cornelius, and Angelica doing? And where? I went on to repeat the news the apprentices had given me. We are still in battle and cannot investigate when the ship from Liasgang will arrive. I ask that you investigate in our stead. We will contact Liasgang, Daniel replied, his composure completely intact. Thank you for taking the time to send your report when you are so busy with the fighting. Oh, and your ordonnances aren't reaching Lady Rosamund's group because they are in Ahrensbach. Was this before they came back to Ahrensbach? Oh, okay, I get it. My anger faded, replaced with overwhelming embarrassment. I was the only one who'd allowed my emotions to get the better of me, and rather than drawing attention to the fact Daniel had politely relieved my concerns about Lady Rosamund. As my head started to clear, I realized he'd also given me some information that not even Lord Bonifacius had revealed. Lady Rosamund is in Ahrensbach. In other words, while the Archduke's troops were spread so thin that they couldn't spare us anymore, Lady Rosamund was fighting her own battle to protect Ehrenfest. Should she never show restraint? It seems to me that she charges headlong into whatever she sets her mind to. I was reminded of the battles we'd fought together while gathering for her to Reeve. A normal Archduke candidate would have delegated the entire task to her guard knights, but she had joined us in spite of her poor health and ended up bedridden as a result. Even back then, Lady Rosamund hadn't been a mere princess to be locked away safely in a tower. Although her retinue has changed since then, during my time in Lady Rosamund's service, I'd battled alongside Daniel, Lord Ferdinand and his retainers. Cornelius and Angelica had needed to stay in the castle for being too young, but they had come of age since then, and there were other new knights serving alongside them. I'd taken my leave after getting married, while Lord Ferdinand and his retainers had gone to Ahrensbach over an entirely separate betrothal. Lady Rosamund's current retinue made the passage of time even more apparent and forced me to reflect on how much my own position had changed. In the past, I had fought for Lady Rosamund. Now I fought for Ilgner and my family. My focus had changed, but not my aim. I'd always wanted to protect those close to me. The knowledge that Lady Rosamund was fighting to protect Ehrenfest gave me the resolve to do the same as her former guard knight. Fighting and winning these border skirmishes would connect me to her in our mutual struggle to save our duchy. Lady Bridget, more invaders than I called. How many more? How many more of these are we gonna get? A knight called. I rose to my feet without the slightest hesitation, then mounted my high beast alongside my fellow knights. Everyone wore looks of unbendable determination. Lady Rosemine, may Ongriff guide you. I shall take inspiration from your actions and devote my all to protecting my home. Oh boy. Feline to the temple! Oh no! Is she gonna get there? Oh, I'm scared now for Feline. Feline can't do shit! She can't do shit when it comes to fighting. So what is gonna happen now? Nobody in the temple can fight except those stupid shoebills. Oh. Why? Damn you better protect her butt. How much more do we have left? Oh my god! How much do I have left? Oh my god! Come on, there! Jesus Christ, how many more pages do I have? 60 pages left. This is gonna be a long one, guys! Feline, just like our drills. Let us be quick, Feline, Grisha said. We are gonna be late. Right, I replied. We need to hurry. Everyone, excuse us. Together with my fellow retainer, I rushed out of the dressing room and climbed upstairs to the retainer room. Our lady wasn't present at the castle. She had gone to Aronsbach to save Lord Ferdinand, but those of us who remained still gathered at second bell for a meeting. We would share intelligence before returning to our operations. Good morning, everyone. I said apologies for the wait. Feline, Grisha, such a leisurely arrival is rare for the two of you. Has something happened? Audley asked, looking at us with concern. The dressing room was busy, in part because Lord Bonifacius' group was deployed. Everyone is fervently gathering intelligence. Archnobles and upper-class men nobles serving as Archduke retainers generally lived in the castle, so they brought attendants from home to dress them. Grisha and I were too poor for that, however, so we had to dress ourselves. Our weak positions, coupled with the fact that we were still underage, made us easy targets, so we had ended up being surrounded by those seeking information. I will send an ordinance the next time I feel you are being kept from your duties, Audley said. Bertilde smiled and added that she would fetch us if ever the need arose. As an archnoble, she seemed quite curious to see the inside of the dressing room. Once Audley and I were seated, Grisha and I were seated, Audley looked over to us. Now then, allow me to begin my report. An ordinance from Riarda arrived. In Our Lady's absence, important news from the Archducal family reached us through Riarda, or Lord Melkor's retainers. It was Audley's duty to receive their ordinances as someone permanently stationed in the castle, but she had easy access to such intelligence anyway. Her husband served as Lady Florencia's scholar, after all. There has been a disturbance in Gerlach, as well as in Ilgner and Griebel, she continued. In all cases, the invaders seemed especially wary of Lord Bonifacius. We are to remain on high alert in case anything happens here. The evening before last, the castle's atmosphere had turned especially sharp when Lord Bonifacius' group had departed for Ilgner, intending to reserve as reinforcements. Invaders had appeared in Griebel the next day, and we received word that the war had grown even larger in scale, creating further issues. The chaos had then spread to Gerlach this morning. In truth, it was hard not to feel like the conflict was quietly approaching us. On another note, a letter has arrived from Clarissa. Lady Rosamund is still unconscious, but Lord Ferdinand is set out for Ehrenfest with Dunkelfelder knights. The Ob has been informed. Audley held out an envelope as to punctuate her report. The border gate we shared with Aronsbach must have fallen into enemy hands, so the only letter that made it through was from Clarissa at Dunkelfelderian. We knew there had been other attempts at correspondence because she had mentioned that Hartmann was also sending letters. Bertilde, how was the Archducal family? Audley asked, turning to look at the girl in question. Bertilde rummaged through her things before taking out a piece of paper. She was supporting Brunhilde in Lady Rosamund's absence, in part because Brunhilde was still short of retainers, but also so that she could more easily obtain information about the Archducal family. Lady Charlotte has been overseeing communications with the Knight's Order and directing the rear line, allowing the Ob to stay at the Foundation, Bertilde said. 2 days ago, Lady Florencia was managing the distribution of provisions, rejuvenation potions, and other supplies to the Knight's Order, but my older sister took over from her yesterday. All roles can be swapped as necessary, and that is my report. Bertilde had concluded as dramatically as if she just finished reading a script. I suspected that Brunhilde had written the report for her. The castle's main buildings seemed particularly busy right now, as everyone made their final preparations for the Archducal family to join the battle. Still, even now, I struggle to believe Lady Rosamund has taken Aronsbach's foundation. Is such a feat even possible? I mused aloud, maybe because I was a lay noble who knew very little of the foundational magics. I'd always seen the Ob as a strictly hereditary role. The idea of someone stealing a foundation was absurd. It is, Daniel replied with a stern expression, and Lady Georgine knows the same technique Lady Rosamund used. She could steal our foundation just as easily. Ever since Lord Bonifacius' departure, Daniel had been staying not in the temple, but with the Knight's Order, meaning he was able to keep us abreast of the war. The tension the Order must have been feeling flowed freely through his every word. Feline, Roderick, is the temple still running evacuation drills? Daniel asked. I exchanged a look with Roderick before giving a firm nod. Yes, we have reached a point where we now work seamlessly with Lord Melkor's retainers. At first we had each focused only on the role given to us, but the process had smoothed out as we'd repeated and gotten more used to our drills. Neither Grey nor Blue Priest could use ordinances, so without practice, keeping in touch with them wouldn't be a simple matter. Lazletta, Grisha, is the Gutenberg's accommodations ready? Daniel asked, continuing his inspection. We have bedding for them and 2 days' worth of provisions. It's all very basic, considering that this is an emergency situation, and we have only secured 2 rooms for them, for the men and women, respectively. Still, we are looking into whether we can use the beds and such in Las Femmes and the servants' rooms. As Archducal attendants, Lazletta and Grisha were somewhat disheartened that they hadn't been able to make adequate preparations for our guests, commoners or otherwise. I nodded along with their report and then remembered that I also had something to add. We received a request from the Planting Company. In the event of an incident, they have asked for Lady Rosemine's incomplete outfits and the Gilberta Company's seamstresses to be evacuated to the library with the Gutenbergs. They do not want the seamstresses who have so industriously banded together to make new clothes for Lady Rosemine to be put in harm's way. Lazletta and Ottilie turned to look at one another, then nodded. To attendants, the completion of their lady's clothing was a most important duty, especially when she was going to need so many outfits for her upcoming royal adoption. Is that even happening still at this point? Because she, as far as we know, she's staying as Aberensbach. Oh, what are they going to say about this? Oh, boy. Oh, wait! Does that mean she'd be able to even get to the Grutterscheid now that she has the Book of Messinora? She can bypass that thing? Maybe? I don't know if she still has to be adopted or not. Indeed, we would not want to delay the completion of Lady Rosemine's new clothes, Ottilie said. Lazletta, Grisha, stay in contact with Losfam and arrange for the seamstresses to be accommodated. I suspect he would struggle to prepare a sewing room for them on his own. Lazletta and Grisha nodded. On a more general note, Ottilie continued, Bertilde, continue to support Brunhilde and learn what you can. Lazletta and Grisha prepared the library. Judith accompanied Feline and Roderick to the temple. Daniel, stay with the Knight's Order. Every single one of you must be ready to take on whatever is asked of you when the need arises. That is all. Disperse. Our meeting in the retainers' room concluded. I mingled with Lord Melkor's retainers as we all made our way to the temple. His and Lady Rosemine's temple attendants greeted us upon our arrival. Good morning, everyone. Gil was there too, even though he was usually in the workshop at this time. He must have been waiting for our response to the Planting Company. The Planting Company's request has been granted, I said. Please evacuate Lady Rosemine's outfits and the seamstresses with everyone else. Understood, Gil replied. I will inform them at once. He must have been impatiently waiting an answer because he immediately took his leave and briskly made his way to the workshop. Lady Judith, Lord Roderick, come with me if you would, Fran said. Lady Feline, Monica will be with you today. Judith and Roderick went with Fran to the High Bishop's chambers. Meanwhile, I went with Monica to the orphanage director's chambers to change into my apprentice blue shrine maiden robes. The rooms were in my care, but they were no place to live. Not when the attendants and chefs were all still assigned to the High Bishop's chambers. My current position was that of a commuting apprentice blue shrine maiden. The battle in Ahrensbach was successful, wasn't it? Monica asked. She helped me put on my robes, her concern clear on her face. When will Lady Rosemine return? Has any new letters arrived? I gave a somewhat troubled smile. She had asked me the same question yesterday. As far as we know, Lady Rosemine has yet to regain consciousness, but she is expected to wake up at some point today. It wasn't unusual for Lady Rosemine to be away from the temple. She had always had one reason or another to be elsewhere. But she had been gone to another duchy to participate in a war. It was only natural that Monica was so worried. To my knowledge, Fran and Gil were asking the same questions. We are awaiting Lady Rosemine's safe return, just as eagerly as you all are here in the temple, I said. Once I was changed, I went to fetch Judith, then we headed to the High Bishop's chambers to help Lord Melkor with his work. Roderick wouldn't be joining us today. There was no reason for him to get involved with temple work when he was planned to accompany Lady Rosemine to the sovereignty. Instead, he was transcribing books for her so that she wouldn't be without any when she moved. Today we must check the income reports of both the Rosemine workshop and the orphanage. The monthly income check had a direct impact on the orphanage's daily operations, so it was said to be the orphanage director's most important duty. It was performed in the presence of both the High Priest and the High Bishop to prevent embezzling. Monica placed several documents in front of Lord Melkor, the future High Bishop, his retainer, Lord Casimir, the former future High Priest, and me. They were a mixture of wooden boards and paper, and their contents ranged from forms given to us by the Planting Company to internal reports from the workshop to Winwood's bookkeeping for the orphanage. I see there was a dramatic rise in food costs, I said. Was there a reason for that? That was when winter ended and the market reopened, allowing us to purchase more supplies. And the income for winter handiwork? I don't see it listed anywhere. That would feature in our next check. We have the money, but the planting company has yet to deliver its final report. We checked the income reports alongside those from last month, compared them to the ones from last year, and did our best to find any mistakes on discrepancies. We were only midway through the monthly check when the third bell rang. A man of Lord Ferdinand's talents would have been able to weed out each and every issue merely by skimming the documents, but we were far from being on his level. Still, as much as our inexperience was slowing us down, it was fun looking through the reports and such while chatting with everyone. These are the apprentices due to come of age in the spring, and this is a list of orphans being baptized in summer, I said. We are preparing rooms and clothing for them, so it's covered in this entry here. These figures are so much smaller than the cost of preparing my chambers, Lord Melkor replied. I have to wonder if I've been living wastefully. I would not compare them, Lord Melkor. Your chambers are by no means equivalent to the rooms given to orphans. As we continued our conversation, an ordinance flew into the room. Rather than going to Lord Melkor or Lord Cosmere, it came straight to me and perched on my arm. Feline, this is Daniel, the little bird said. We all knew about his connection to the Knight's Order, so our ears picked up on hearing his voice. We received this tip from a commoner, but several suspicious figures who might have been Lady Georgine's group were seen boarding an Arenfest-bound merchant ship vessel in Lysgang. We consulted the dock and were told the ship should reach the West Gate at around noon. Evacuate before then, but do not panic. There is still enough time for you to follow procedures. Daniel wanted us to stay calm, but my heart was already in my throat. Lady Georgine was on her way. My hand shook so violently that when I tried to respond, I couldn't even tap the facestone with my staff. Allow me to inform Lord Melkor's guard knights and summon the Blue Priest, Lord Cosmere said, the picture of composure. Do you remember what you need to do once you have sent your responses? I didn't even need to think about my answer. The words came out almost automatically. I will announce the evacuations to the orphanage and the gate guards. Good, Lord Cosmere replied. His praise calmed me down enough that I managed to steady my hand and create an ordnance. Daniel, this is Feline. I thank you ever so much for the warning. We will start the evacuation at once. May Angriff guide you. I swung my staff and the ordnance took flight. Only when it was completely out of sight did I start putting away my writing utensils. Monica had already gathered together the documents, and Judith sent an ordnance to Roderick in the High Bishop's chambers. We received word from Lord Daniel. Finish the evacuation before noon. We will go to the orphanage. Roderick, remember the drills. Roderick was tasked with using magic letters to contact the planting company. He would then prepare the High Bishop's chambers. Feline, it is time. We stepped out into the corridor, leaving Lord Cosmere's group to send out a flurry of ordinances and started toward the orphanage so there was no nobles there or in the workshop. We would need to deliver the news to them in person. Knowing slowed our march, but we called out to the Grey Priests and Shrine Maidens we encountered en route, telling them to finish up and head straight to the orphanage. We even caught sight of my little brother Conrad cleaning the hall right outside the nobles section. Conrad, you should evacuate as well, I said. Are Dirk and the others okay? He asked, casting a worried glance in the direction of the nobles section as he put his cleaning rag back in its bucket. Those baptized as apprentice Blue Priests had already moved elsewhere. I will check if they have evacuated later. Now run along. If you don't get to safety, there might be the ones worrying about you. Right, he replied with a nod. Fran then spoke up from behind us. Lady Felina will go to the workshop. I must confirm that Lutz and the others have gone home. Please do, I said. There were planting company employees there, and the Gutenbergs among them need to move to Lady Rosemine's library at once. As per our drills, gather in the dining hall once the boys' building has been evacuated. Fran nodded and took the next right to the boys' building. I went left and continued to the girls' building. Monica opened the door for me when we arrived, whereupon I addressed Wilma and the others. We received an update from the Knight's Order. The evacuations must begin immediately. Please stay calm and act according to plan. Wilma's entire body went rigid, but she nodded and went to the third floor to check for any Grey Shrine Maidens. Delia said she would check the rooms on the first floor and then headed downstairs. At the same time, Lily instructed the children in the dining hall to go to the basement. They were doing exactly as we practiced. All we need to do is follow our plans, I told myself. Just do as Lady Rosamine instructed. I entrusted speaking with the returning Shrine Maidens to Monica and went downstairs with Judith to tell the cooks to evacuate. It was then that an ordinance appeared and landed on my fellow retainer's arm. This is Fonzel. I have arrived at the Noble's Gate. Daedric is heading to the front gate now. Those among Lord Melkor's guard who had been with the Knight's Order were arriving at the temple one by one. I'll make my way to the back gate, Judith said it to me. I need to activate the shoe mill so they can take over from the Grey Priests on duty. Remember, to go back to the High Bishop's chambers with Fran and Monica once you're done here. Yes, I remember. Take care of the gate and... Just be careful, Judith. Just as she stopped escorting me and went through the basement to go outside, the Grey Shrine Maidens returned from the workshop. This is all of us, one of them informed me. Then we can close the doors. In the past, the doors had been designed in such a way that they could only be opened from the outside. Now the reverse was true. It seemed unlikely that Lady Georgine would enter the orphanage, but for safety's sake, we started barricading ourselves in with pots and furniture. I confirmed that everything was proceeding smoothly before returning to the dining hall. There was nobody upstairs. Everyone is gathered in the basement. No sooner had Wilma and Lily reported to me than Fran confirmed the successful evacuation of the boys' building. A deep sigh escaped me to my relief. I carried out my duty as the orphanage director. Now stay inside and remain quiet until we return to announce that everything is safe, I said. Then took my leave of Frank and Monica. We heard the door lock behind us, and Wilma's footsteps faded into the distance. Let us return it as well. We closed the door to the noble section, hoping to put as many obstacles in our enemy's path as we could. Then I went to see Dirk and Bertram in their rooms, intending to assuage my little brother's worries. Stay still and remain quiet, I said firmly. Even if you hear a fuss or a scream outside, do not open the door to investigate. Is that understood? From there, I continued to the third floor where the women's rooms were located. This was my domain to check, since it wasn't something the boys were comfortable exploring. No matter how scared you might be, do not leave your room under any circumstances, I said, relaying the same warning to the apprentice Blue Shrine Maidens. Nowhere is going to be safe. Or safer. By the time I returned to the High Bishop's chambers, Roderick was there to welcome me with a good work. Gil, Fritz, Nicola, Hugo, and their assistants from the kitchen were also present. Commoner servants would never normally be allowed inside the High Bishop's chambers, but they were Lady Rosamund's personnel. She had instructed Roderick and me to fuel a barrier magic tool with our mana to protect them. The tables and chairs had already been moved to make way for the magic tool, which now sat at the very center of the room. Lady Rosamund had made it to protect us and the other non-combatants staying in the temple. In her words, it would make these chambers as safe as the library. Once I'd confirmed that everyone was present, I sent an ordinance to Lord Cosmere. This is Feline. We have evacuated the orphanage and closed the door to the noble section. I've also spoken with the apprentice Blue Shrine Maidens on the third floor. The attendants of the High Bishop's chambers had all returned. Everyone, are you ready for us to activate the barrier? Roderick said. Once we start pouring mana into it, nobody's going to be able to leave or enter the room. I took a moment to consider everyone's responses, then returned to Roderick and nodded. His expression tense, he drank a mana-only rejuvenation potion before touching the tool and channeling his mana into it. Lady Rosamund's magic tool was a splendid creation capable of blocking all manner of attack, but activating it required an immense amount of mana. The device was quick to consume as much as it was given, so if we didn't remove our hands in time, Roderick and I would almost certainly end up entirely depleted. I waited for my turn with an identical rejuvenation potion in hand, and soon enough, Feline, get ready, Roderick called. I drank the potion and touched the magic tool. Roderick waited until my hand was firmly in place before removing his own so that the flow of mana wouldn't be broken. Thanks, my mana! Not even the restorative properties of the rejuvenation potion stopped me from feeling my mana being drained. It wasn't a sensation I was used to. In fact, it was really disturbing, but it was the only way we could protect the people Our Lady had put in our care. Compared to the knights fighting on the front lines, this is nothing. Roderick's mana must have been regenerating at an astonishing rate. His breathing was ragged, and his brow was furrowing in displeasure. Oh, the face stone's color changed, he soon observed, just a bit more. After taking a deep breath, Roderick put his hand back on the tool. The face stone flashed only a few moments later, and yellow light filled the room as a powerful barrier of wind took shape. The sensation of mana churning within my body disappeared at the same time, replaced instead with complete and utter exhaustion. The same must have been true for Roderick. He had put his hands on the floor to stop himself from collapsing. Lady Feline, Lord Roderick! Monica and Nicola held me up while Fran and Gale brought Roderick back to his feet. We were taken to a bench, and we both let out deep sighs the moment we plopped down. With this, the High Bishop's chambers are safe, I wheezed. Thankful the tool had activated before we ran out of mana. We did it, Roderick. He gazed at the tool, equally relieved. And that's our job done. Hartman should be satisfied. Hartman had said to us during our drills, neither one of you will be of any use in battle, but since you are nobles, you can at least activate defensive magic tools and protect the commoners Lady Rosamund needs. Excellent work, both of you, Fran said. Seeing the barrier we'd activated with our mana gave me an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. Zom handed us cups of fruit juice while the attendants and chefs all praised us. And then an ordinance arrived. This is Judith. Daniel sent word that the boat has arrived at the west gate. Be ready. People in silver cloth have been spotted. Everyone in the room tensed up. The worst was finally upon us, and there was only one thing we could do now. May victory come to Ehrenfest. May everyone be safe. O mighty King and Queen of the endless skies. O mighty Eternal Five who rule the mortal realm. O goddess of water flew train, O god of fire Ladenshaft, O goddess of wind Shitzaria, O goddess of earth Geduld, O god of life Abiglabe, we offer you our prayers and gratitude. Praise be to the gods. Fourth bell rang out as we prayed. Oh no! Oh dear, this is gonna be, oh, I'm scared! Next, I'm gonna wait for the next freaking book for this! I don't wanna wait! I don't wanna wait! I really don't! We gotta wait for the next book! Oh. Effa, strong bonds, strong protection. Mom, come on, we gotta go! Master Bando said we need to evacuate. A soldier's gonna come soon and say the same thing. A fight's about to break out at the west gate, so we gotta evacuate before noon. It was third bell and my son had just burst into my workroom. Rumors had already spread of the city's knights being sent to fight a war in the south, and with the recent decision to station knights at all the city's gates, not just the north one, His announcement caused an understandable stir in the workshop. Threats from the other duchies were coming to Ehrenfest, and as mere commoners, the most we could do was find somewhere safe to hide. Whether at home or at work, there was nothing we could hope to accomplish in a battle between nobles. Let's go, Mom, Camille urged. Together we rushed out of the workshop. The Gutenbergs and other personnel going with Lady Rosemine to the Sovereignty had been told to evacuate to the nobles' quarter. At first we needed to go to the planting company. We were all supposed to meet there and then travel by carriage. Oh, we're not meeting at the planting company anymore, my son informed me. We're going to head to the Gilberta company instead. Why is that, I asked. Too much stuff. Camille was only a child, so he wasn't the best at explaining things, but I could guess Mr. Benno had sent him to make sure I went to the right place. No soldiers had come to announce the evacuation, so the city's crowd didn't seem particularly tense. We were the only ones hurrying down the street. Go inside, Mom, Camille urged me. Go see Thule. Sitting outside the Gilberta company were 3 carriages, if they could even be called that. They were more like fancy horse-drawn wagons designed to transport large groups of people at once. I rushed past those busily moving luggage into the wagons and went into the store, whereupon Thule gestured me over. I went with her to the back room, confused, and saw several women changing clothes behind a screen. For obvious reasons, we can't go to the nobles' quarter dressed as we are now, she said. Could you change into these? Hurry, hurry, we don't have long before noon, another seamstress urged as she helped the others change. I did as instructed and wiggled into the new clothes I was given. They were even more elegant than my best dress, the one I'd worn for my coming-of-age ceremony. Under any other circumstances, I would have felt comfortable putting them on, but I don't have time to waste when everyone was in such a rush. Once you're done, Mom, board the carriage. Oh, and take us with you. Gunilla, is that everything? Tilly spoke with one of the other seamstresses, who, while I went back outside with a wooden box in my arms. The soldiers were now out and about, ordering everyone to evacuate. Seeing the rush of people hurrying down the street made me feel increasingly uneasy. You're in the front wagon, Zach, Lutz said. He was directing those of us who had finished getting changed. You can sit in the front second one with your wife if you really want, but it's meant to be for women only. Beside him, Mr. Benno was shouting in the direction of the store. Time to go! Anyone who's not in their wagon is getting left behind. That was the last thing I wanted. I went over to Lutz and asked which wagon I was meant to ride in. The back one, please. It won't be comfortable since it's full of the Gilberta Company's luggage, but you won't be in there for long. We're about to leave. I took my luggage into the wagon and sat down. Lutz must have put me with the Gilberta Company's seamstresses, as Mrs. Karina, Thule, and the rest of the group soon joined me. Mr. Benno sent word just this morning that we need to protect Lady Rosemine's new outfits and that the Gilberta Company's seamstresses need to evacuate too, Thule explained. That's why there's so much luggage. We're bringing our tools so that we can work while we're hiding. As we discussed this and that, the wagon started to move. It took us all the way to the gate outside the nobles' quarter and then stopped. Ah, it's Daniel, Thule said, having been gazing out the window. Wonderful, Mrs. Karina added with a smile. My brother said we would see him here. If not for Lord Daniel, we might have been waiting the entire day. Commoners trying to enter the nobles' quarter were normally stopped at the gate and stalled for a painfully long time, but because Lord Daniel had come out to meet us, we were let right through. This is the nobles' quarter. It's your first time coming here, right, Mom? I peered outside and my eyes widened. This was where mine lived? Beautiful, pure white stone stretched out in every direction, and there was so much greenery. There was a lot of space, too. Especially compared to back home, it was so empty that I started to question if anyone else was even here. I don't see any other people or carriages, I said. Carriages are a pretty common sight here, Thule explained. I think the nobles have already evacuated, though. Oh, that makes sense. I continued to look around. Each ivory building was a noble estate, I was told, and they weren't even shared. Each one housed a single family. Then again, they technically are shared to some degree, since servants and attendants live there, too, Mrs. Karina explained with a smile. It really is shocking to see so many enormous estates, right? Each one is supposed to have its own garden, too. I was extra shocked to discover that nobles didn't even share wells. It made me wonder where they had the opportunity to spend time with their neighbors and share gossip. Man, Mom, the Archduke Castle is behind that wall, Thule said, pointing. I went there for the first time just recently. It was so huge I couldn't believe it. Mine lived even further back, apparently. I heard they were going to Lady Rosemine's library today. Is that here in the castle, I asked? Yes, no, I think it's in the estate the previous high priest gave her before he went somewhere else. Les doesn't know the details either. He just told me what he learned from Gil. Oh, well, I'm looking forward to seeing it. One of the seamstresses added. All noble estates look the same on the outside, but their interiors are totally unique. I can't wait to see what Lady Rosemine's like. The seamstresses were beside themselves with excitement at the designs and decorations inside the estate. I suspected they wanted to use them as inspiration for future outfits. Oh, they're going to be disappointed! The decorations aren't what I'm excited to see, though. The Gutenbergs were being evacuated to Lady Rosemine's estate, and the arrival of so many commoners meant the lady of the house would need to be present. I assumed we would only exchange greetings, but if nothing else, I would get to see my daughter again. Wrong! Sadly, you won't get to yet. It was the one silver lining to all this chaos. As our conversations moved from clothes to dyes, the wagon turned a corner. I already knew that each plot of land belonged to a noble estate, but there were 3 buildings on each one. Which house was whose? And would mine's neighbors complain about so many commoners passing by their homes? As these questions ran through my mind, we continued past 2 more structures and then stopped outside the largest one at the very back. I stepped out of the wagon and gazed up at the estate towering over us. This is Lady Rosemine's house? Technically Lord Ferdinand's, but he gave it to her, so... I was too dazed to believe it. The building was far too giant for an unmarried child. Not even the home of the rich in front of the temple were this big. Lord Daniel shook his head. Not a house, a library. He was the noble who had always seen mine home safely during her days as an apprentice Blue Shrine Maiden. Even now, he stayed by her side as a guard knight and regularly bridged the gap between the worlds of nobles and commoners. Gunter had told me he was an honest man, someone you could really trust. What's a library, I asked. Is it not somewhere where you live? It's a place used to store books you've collected, like a way of organizing them so they're easy to access. You could sleep in one, but since Lady Rosemine spends her time in the castle or the temple, she doesn't actually live in hers. It's a house for books? That didn't make sense to me at all. Mine had always been obsessed with books and paper and whatnot, but I never expected her to use the giant house the High Priest had given her for this. It was already like that anyway, so... She must have been causing so much trouble for those around her. Mom, hurry! Camille called out from halfway up a long set of stairs. Lord Daniel urged me on as well, as I started making my way up. You are Lady Rosemine's personnel and the Gutenbergs, I assume. Do come in, a young man said as he opened the estate's door for us. His mannerisms and way of speaking made it obvious he was a noble, which rooted us all to the spot. We hadn't expected a noble attendant to welcome us. I understand your surprise, but could you go inside, Lord Daniel said dryly. He had just come up the stairs behind us. Is Lady Rosemine not here? Mr. Benno asked. I should like to greet her before intruding upon her estate. I don't know what the expectations were when meeting with nobles, but judging by how hesitant he seemed, meeting the lord or lady of a household must have been a very big deal. She is absent, Lord Daniel replied. Members of the Archducal family must fight to protect their duchy in times of war. She's already leading a detachment of knights on the front lines. Oh, the Gutenbergs all gasped. I did as well. It hadn't even crossed my mind that we might be invited to an estate while its lady was away. And never in all my life had I expected mine, who was still only a young woman, to lead troops in the battle. Oh, you have no idea! Y'all haven't even seen how she looks now. Oh my god, I can't wait for that reaction. Her father's gonna have a conniption. He'll be like, my baby girl's all grown up. That's what he'll be thinking. He'll definitely be thinking that. Is it okay for her to be doing that? She's much too sickly. She's quite unwell, Lutz said, likely haven't spoken without thinking. Lord Daniel raised an eyebrow. I won't pretend there isn't risk involved, but this is Lady Rosemine. She obtained her forces using methods nobody else would ever have employed, or even considered for that matter. And now she's just forging ahead as she pleases. I'm confident she'll win no matter what predicament she ends up in. That certainly is true, Lutz said with a smile and a nod. Mr. Benno and Mr. Mark smiled as well, which helped calm me down a little, but they knew far more about mine's noble persona than I did. In short, forget about the greetings for now, Lord Daniel said. Just wait until the battle is over. We need you here since you're going with Lady Rosemine to the sovereignty. This estate has so many protective magic tools that your safety is guaranteed. Lady Rosemine instructed me to guard you all, but I must head to the west gate before the enemy arrives. Did he just say the west gate? First to enter the estate was Mr. Benno, who had more experience with nobles than the rest of us. Though it did take some urging from Lord Daniel, next was Mark. I watched them out of the corner of my eye, but I was so preoccupied with my husband's absence that I couldn't move. The house might be safe, but what about Gunter? He's at the west gate. I was forcefully reminded of when a noble from another duchy had a targeted mine in the temple. Gunter had sustained an injury on his arm, and the sight of him hunched over, racked with regret that he hadn't been able to protect our daughter, was burned into my memory. There wasn't a doubt in my mind that, like before, he would devote his all to defending the city and his family. As my uncertainty returned, I ended up squeezing the charm mine had given me. I've been told it would activate when struck by something that would normally do a lot of damage. Would it help Gunter to have even one more of these? Maybe, but I wasn't in a position to give him mine. Would it be rude to ask Lord Daniel to deliver it for me since he already had plans to head to the gate? I debated the question while watching him speak with an attendant by the door who looked like she had just come of age. Ladisletta, we aren't going to be sheltering any more commoners here, he said. Activate the barrier once I'm gone. As you will. Grisha and I shall see it done. Be safe, Daniel. Lord Daniel nodded in response and turned to leave. Mom, what are you doing? Tully asked. Everyone else has gone inside. She and Camille tried to pull me into the estate by my hands, but my body wouldn't move. This was my last chance. Lord Daniel turned around when he heard Tully cry out. He noticed that I was standing in the doorway and said, Is something wrong? I saw consideration in his gray eyes, and the way he looked at me encouraged me to speak. This is Lord Daniel. He won't be offended. I removed, then held out my charm. Lord damn it, I'm sorry for speaking out of place, but please give this to my husband at the West Gate while you're there. If we're going to be safe here, he'll need it more than I do. Please give him Lady Rosemine's charm so that no harm comes to him. All right, Daniel said at length. I'll take it. As I thanked him, Tuli held out her own charm. Lord Daniel, please take mine too. Dad needs it more right now. Camille did the same. You can tell Lady Rosemine we handed ours over because we wanted to protect Dad. Oh! Lady Rosemine's gonna... She'll think that's so sweet, but at the same time she'll be upset that they didn't keep their charms. It would be my honor, Lord Daniel said, accepting our charms with a gentle smile. Now, if that's all, I must be heading to the West Gate. Hurry on inside. With that, he climbed onto his high beast and flew away. Come home safe, Gunter. I pray that you don't end up in danger. Once we were inside, the young man from before closed and locked the door behind us. The others were waiting for us in the entrance hall. Lostbaum, if you would guide them the rest of the way, we will activate the magic tools, Lady Lesletta said to the young man, Lord Lostbaum, before heading further into the house with Lady Grisha. They were going to use the magic tools Lord Daniel had mentioned to keep us all safe. After watching the two girls leave, Lord Lostbaum had the rest of us through the estate. Please take care not to venture upstairs, for that is where the master chambers reside. The young man continued to explain the places we wouldn't be allowed access to while showing us the rooms we would use if the battle stretched on. The furnishings alone told me this was a very expensive house, and it made me all the more thankful that I'd changed my clothes. I wouldn't have dared sit down in my usual getup. Those are the Gilberta Company. Please bring Lady Rosemine's outfits here, Lord Lostbaum said. We have prepared a room in which you can sew. Thank you, Mrs. Craner replied. Then she looked at the mountain of luggage before being brought to the estate and paused. Allow us, Zack said. There's not much else for us to do here, so just say the word if you need us. A warm smile spread across Mrs. Craner's face. Oh my, Zack, Johann, thank you. Meanwhile, Tuli was speaking with a woman from another wagon, someone she knew from the look of things. It's been a while, Ella. I see you're staying here too. I thought the chefs would have evacuated to the temple. I was on leave to have my son, the young woman replied, holding onto the baby in her arms. I came here with him and my mom. I doubt I'll see you again before we leave, so until then. Ella gave her baby to her mother before approaching our guide. Lord Lostbaum, will the estate struggle to prepare lunch for so many unexpected guests? My mother can watch over my son, so allow me to help as Lady Rosemine's personal chef. I would appreciate that greatly. Should we help too? One woman asked as she and the other Gutenberg's wives stepped forward. We might not know noble recipes, but we can make normal food. Ella and Lord Lostbaum started to discuss the proposal. They agreed it was a good idea, but Lord Lostbaum didn't want strangers in the estate's kitchen. Could they instead peel vegetables in the servants' quarters, Ella suggested? That sounds like a fair compromise. We shouldn't need more than 2 people for that. In the end, it was decided that Zack's and Demo's wives would peel the vegetables. They went with Ella to the servants' quarters. Well, I guess they got lunch sorted. I spent a moment watching Tuli move busily between the rooms given to the Gilberta Company and then looked around, wondering what Camille was up to. I soon spotted him with the planting company. Listen, Camille, you won't get many chances to explore the inside of a noble's estate, Lutz said. Make the most of this one while you can. You can use the decor here as inspiration when furnishing the Italian restaurant, or you can make some selling ideas to other inspiring high-class inns and stores. We want to learn as much as we can for when we establish our store in the Sovereignty. Right, my son replied. Then he got straight to inspecting the house's decorations. Let's give a light smile before turning to Lord Lostbaum. If you would allow me to ask, where might the books be? I've been making new Ehrenfest style ones at Lady Rosemine's request, but we rarely have the opportunity to see traditional books. If you are especially careful not to dirty or damage them, I could show you where they are kept. Believe me, I won't let anything happen to those books, Lutz replied, his expression gravely serious. I've seen how Lady Rosemine gets when someone doesn't treat them with respect. Her eyes change color and everything. Looking back, I couldn't help but chuckle. Mine had always been such a nightmare at times like that. Mom! Mom! Tilly called. Mrs. Craner wants a hand. If you don't mind, we've done everything we can to help Dad stay safe, so let's keep ourselves busy for the time being. I went with my daughter to the sewing room, which was now packed with tools. Large pieces of cloth and a whole bunch of unfinished clothes were spread out over boxes. This is a lot, I muttered. Just how many outfits are you making? Mine had gone through an enormous growth spurt. I noticed it immediately on the day of Camille's baptism. But not even that could justify the sheer volume of clothes being worked on. It was way too much for any one person to wear, so maybe some of them were for other customers. Oh shoot! Did they already see her? Wait! Did they already see her growth spurt? I could have swore that the growth spurt happened, then she went to meet with Sylvester. They ended up having a meeting about the invasion thing, and then she got the last 12 from Ferdinand, and then they all left. Am I forgetting something? But not even that could justify the sheer volume of clothes being worked on. There was way too much for any one person to wear, so maybe some of them were for other customers? As well as our own work, we brought some of the clothes entrusted to neighboring workshops, Tully answered. Lady Rosemine's order was too large for the Gilberta Company to manage alone. Oh, Mrs. Carina, when can we expect the fitting? Not until the war's over, but I suspect they'll want to arrange it as soon as they can. There really isn't much time before the Archduke Conference. Mrs. Carina paused her work to look at me. You can sew, yes? Can I rely on your assistance? My eyes widened in surprise. I was a decent seamstress, sure, but only in comparison to my neighbors. I was a dyer by trade, so I'd never sewn clothes meant for a noble. Should I really be working on an order like this, I asked. I wanted nothing more than to help make clothes for my beloved daughter. But the Archducal family demanded perfection. A single mistake risked devastating the Gilberta Company's reputation. Given the time constraints, we don't have much of a choice. Besides, keeping busy should put you more at ease than sitting around with nothing to do. Can we count on you? The design's right here. My hands trembled as I took some cloth and the design document from Mrs. Carina, but I did my best to study them as I got to work. I was using borrowed tools, and Tully was making a hairpin beside me. I poured my heart and soul into every stitch, praying that both mine and Gunter would return home safe. Oh, here we go. Here's Gunter. How much more are we getting here? Jesus Christ! Hey, Gunter, the West Commander shouted. Today's shipment is here for you. Bring the apprentices along. Right, just give me a chance to plug my nose. Because I had agreed to leave Ehrenfest with Lady Rosemine, I needed to put in my notice with the city's garrison. They demote me to the rank of captain again in preparation for my departure, which was expected to happen at the end of spring, so now I spent most of my time looking after the apprentices. Seriously, another shipment, they asked, when I told them the news, all grimacing. It was hard to blame them. Necessary or not, our work was exhausting. We all took a moment to plug our noses, then covering our mouths with cloth, we grabbed the newly delivered barrel. God, reeks! Do you know we don't know that? Shut up and get moving. And as I told those of us at the West Gate to start collecting excrement, which we were expected to dump on the heads of any invaders who tried to force their way into the city. Oh, I wish that they had gone. I wish they had gone through the gate. I would have loved to see them getting dumped with poop. Oh my God, Georgie would have had a freaking hissy fit on that one. Come on, why didn't they do that? That would have been awesome. That would have been hilarious. Woo! But then they would have all paid for it. They would have all paid for it! Badly! I guess that's probably why they didn't do that. Who tried to force their way into the city. Of course, that was only the first step of our battle plan. People dressed in silver were immune to the mana attacks nobles used, so weakened commoners had been told to ready our weapons and join the battle. Those knights have it easy, one of the apprentices griped. All they have to do is give an order. We're the ones who actually have to collect this crap. Literally. Literally. Hard to believe a noble came up with a plan like this, another added. They must have been a real monster. I'd say that was Rosemine's idea. I'd stayed silent, trying to focus on the job at hand. If no ordinary noble would come up with a scheme like this, then it probably came from mine. I really didn't know how to feel about that. Nah, it couldn't have been mine. My adorable daughter would never have come up with such a disgusting idea. Back home, she'd always been obsessively clean. I mean, yes, it would have come from her. Of course she'd think of something outside the box like this. Oi, don't complain about the nobles when there's a chance one might hear you, I warned. Lady Rosemine and Lord Damiel might be protecting us, but don't get cocky. Annoy the wrong noble, and your head might roll before word even reaches them. The apprentices fell silent. It wasn't rare for nobles to kill commoners over the slightest inconvenience. They also knew I was speaking from experience, since my daughter had, for all intents and purposes, died at the hands of an arrogant noble. Look, I continued, this ain't pleasant work by any means, but we're doing it for a good reason. The duchy's being invaded right now. Some of our knights order had to rush to the border a couple of days ago, and who knows when the enemy might show up on our doorstep. Our commander had told us the invaders were trying to reach the nobles' quarter, which explained why there were so many knights hanging around the gate these days. They were so suspicious of anyone trying to get into the city that even merchants here on business from other towns were being thoroughly inspected. Plus, the knights said they'd tell us if anything big happens. How much of an improvement is that? Not too long ago, they wouldn't have given us commoners a second thought. Slowly but surely, the city of Ehrenfest was changing. Lord Damiel was keeping us in the know, and the knights were paying attention to all the gates, not just the north one. I glared at the apprentices, wanting them to realize how lucky they were, and they all winced in response. This is the part where you tell us Lady Rosemine's the only one who would have do this much for commoners, right? One of them asked. We get it, and she cleaned up the whole city. Seems like there are plenty of considerate nobles these days. I was told they invite merchants to the temple for business meetings. And you know who made that happen, I demanded. Lady Rosemine, the High Bishop. Yeah, we know how much you worship her, Captain. How about we just work in silence? We won't complain anymore. Thank you. The apprentices shut me down the moment I tried to focus our conversation on Lady Rosemine. I really wanted to brag about my daughter some more, but few people actually care to listen because they don't know she's your daughter. If they did, they would understand you bragging about her so much. But nope, as far as they know, your daughter's dead. Once we moved the waste, we removed our shirts and started scrubbing ourselves as quickly as we could. The water was still cold at this time of year, but how else were we supposed to get rid of the stench? You lot, a passing knight called. He must have thought we were taking a break. Can you tell me when the ship from Lies Gang is due to arrive? I glanced over at my apprentices before I replied. There are several that came here from Lies Gang. Some arrived yesterday. More will come today. I normally start appearing around noon. I was doing my best to sound proper, but as I always did in situations like this. That doesn't help. Tell the guards to be especially suspicious of anyone coming in from Lies Gang. Do you understand me? The knight spoke sharply and with a tense look in his eyes. Our enemies must have boarded a vessel at Lies Gang. I was reminded of the Eastern commander whose communication error had allowed that noble from another duchy to worm his way into the city. The faster we inform the others, the better. I'll go spread the word, I told the apprentices. If anything happens while I'm gone, start the evacuation. You all know which streets you're meant to cover, right? Triple check them. Something tells me the time's finally come. I gave my body a quick wipe, then rushed to inform the commander, not even bothering to put my shirt back on. They're going in shirtless. Dude, I gotta see that. Because I'm sure with all the training he's done, he's probably not too bad. There's a ship about to arrive. Anyone who's free, watch the gate. Each time a boat came into view, the crowd at the gate swelled. We've been instructed to keep an eye out for anyone who carried themselves like a noble, or more importantly, arrived dressed in silver. Even the slightest cause for concern had to be reported to the knights. This one's meant to be carrying a lot of rich merchants, right? Sounds like the perfect place for nobles looking to blend in. Keep a close eye on them. Some cheap ships prioritize their merchandise, forcing the people on board to cram themselves into corners and the like, whereas more expensive ones had dedicated rooms for their passengers. The vessel now docking, which had come from Lies Gang, was full of rich merchants, so I went without saying which category it belonged to. You boarded at Lies Gang, but where are you from? I asked the first of our new arrivals as they reached the gate. If you're a merchant, show us your guild card. And what store are you here to do business with? Nobles weren't always easy to distinguish from servant-swarmed merchants, so it was important to gather as much information as we could. Uh-oh. This is it! I am Lago, a Gerlach merchant, the man replied in short order, then showed me his guild card. I deal in plants and came to discuss selling spring herbs as an ingredient for dyes. The ship containing my merchandise should arrive around noon. For now, I intend to visit Vita's Apothecary on the main street and the ink workshop. I am going to be staying at the Doltus Inn, as I always do. I recognized this Lago guy. I'd seen him several times before, and the answers he gave all checked out. It was rare to see him without any servants or attendants, but a lot of merchants assigned their personnel to the ship carrying their product. I nodded and let him through. Don't let him through! Don't let him through! Oh, fuck. The next merchant waiting outside that entered, I gave him the same set of questions as the first and carefully inspected his servants in case any of them were nobles in disguise. The line's long enough already, and there's another ship arriving at noon? Today wasn't gonna be easy. I tried to psych myself up, and that was when third bell rang. It wasn't much later than a knight arrived and ordered us to evacuate the commoners. They had it on good authority that the ship due to arrive at noon was carrying invaders. Nobody had seen our suspects disembark, so we needed to be on high alert. Gunter, take the apprentices and start your rounds, the commander instructed. We'll get ourselves ready for a fight. Following our orders, the apprentices and I spurted outside. It was standard procedure to head straight to the other gate to spread news of the danger, but that wasn't necessary this time. The nobles were keeping each other up to date using white birds. Remember your sections, I shouted. We started with Wales, telling the workers and residents gathered there to evacuate. My section was the area around the central plaza, which included the city's guilds. But I spread the news to anyone and everyone I saw along the way. There's a ship of enemy nobles headed straight for the city. It's going to be dangerous here, so make sure you're home before fourth bell. Don't go outside until the fighting's over. I did my best to hurry along the parents enjoying the plaza and the apprentices running errands. Some merchants were setting up their food stalls, but I told them to put their wares away and rush home as soon as they could. This won't be some harmless tussle between drunks, I said. Nobles are going to be shooting magic at each other. The knights have said they'll try to lead the enemy to the nobles' quarter, but that doesn't mean it won't be dangerous. And they certainly won't compensate you for any damage to your merchandise, so pack it away and go. Next, I threw open the doors of workshops along the street and shouted inside, your jobs aren't more important than your lives. Close up shop and either hunker down or go home. There's a dangerous ship arriving at noon. It was quite a ways away from the main street, but I also stopped by Effa's workshop. To my surprise, it was empty apart from a few people, and all the work tools had already been put away. Oh, is that you, Gunter? Thanks for coming, but we're one step ahead of you. Your boy told us to evacuate a while ago. As it turned out, Camille had known about the situation ahead of us, and my darling wife had already evacuated. I heard from Lady Rosemine's personnel, and the Planted Company were being located together, and while I wasn't sure where they'd gone, there wasn't a doubt in my mind that they were safe. I could join the fight without having to worry about them. By the time I finished circling the buildings by the plaza, the main street was swarmed with people heading home. As I called out for them to be careful, my eyes wandered to the temple gate in the distance. Was that where mine was now? Or was she in the castle? Neither! Not the moment, neither! Given the circumstances, I sincerely hoped that she was safe. Still, nobles from another duchy, huh? I was hit with a wave of bitterness as I remembered the day mine was taken from me. What if something like that happened again? The very thought made my entire body tense up. Yeah, this time I'll stop them at the gate. They're not getting in my city. Too late! They're already in! Fuck. I really hope that if Georgine actually manages to get to the Foundation, that Sylvester is in a chair, sitting there waiting for her. She'll be teleported and be like, hello, sister. Oh, boy, I really kind of hope that is the case. Because he's supposed to be guarding the Foundation, so where else would he possibly be? We knew exactly where the threat was going to arrive. I squeezed the charm mine had given me. I wouldn't let any bad actors reach her in the temple or castle. It was close to noon when the clamor of the evacuations finally settled down. I quickly double-checked to make sure I hadn't missed anyone, then went back to the west gate. You sure took your time, Gunter. Lord Daniel's waiting for you. Lord Daniel? The soldiers assumed I knew Lady Rosemine's guard knight from our trips to Haas. Really, though, I'd met Lord Daniel way back when mine was still an apprentice shrine maiden. Here I am, I said as I entered the knight's waiting room, feeling tense. I was told you have some business with me? Lord Daniel had been going over something with the knights when I arrived, but he said right, and came over to see me. We exited the room together to speak privately. Lady Rosamine asked me to protect her family in the lower city, he began. To that end, I participated in the evacuation of her personnel, your family included. You don't need to worry, I made sure they reached their destination safely. Thank you. And when I did, they gave me these. Lord Daniel took 3 charms from a pouch on his hip, the same charms Effa, Tully, and Camille had worn non-stop ever since we'd received them from Lady Rosamine. We'd been told they would protect us from anything that might do us harm, so why were they here? I wasn't sure what to think. Your family is under the protection of a powerful magic tool Lady Rosamine made. They asked me to give you their charms to make sure you were just as safe. My family was so worried about me as I was them. These charms proved that more than anything I could feel the flames of love blazing in my heart as I put them on. How is Lady Rosamine, I asked. Is that tool you mentioned protecting her too? Even if she couldn't interact with Effa and the others as family, I wanted to know they were together during this crisis. Oh dear. Lord Daniel gave a half smile and shook his head. Lady Rosamine is the Archduke's adopted daughter. She's currently leading a group of knights to defend Ehrenfest and everyone she cares about. All of a sudden, mine's old promise flashed in my mind. My name's gonna change, and I can't call you Dad anymore, but I'll always be your daughter. I'll protect this city and you, and everyone I will. She'd chosen to become a noble to protect us, and it was because of her sacrifice that we'd managed to live this long without being torn apart by the nobility. And now she'd literally charged into battle for us. I couldn't be more proud. That's my daughter. I assumed you'd be worried about her. I thought that she was trying so hard to keep her promise to protect the whole city was enough to bring a tear to my eye. She was fighting to protect her family. Stay safe, Gunter, for Lady Rosamine's sake as well as your own. Fight well, and may Ungriff guide you. I couldn't help but notice the concern in Lord Daniel's voice. Mine was the reason we'd met in the first place, and it seemed that my being a commoner hadn't stopped him from worrying about me. Thank you, I said, wiping the tears from my eyes. The family's message has been received loud and clear. Let's protect the city together, and may Ungriff guide you too. I stood up straight and tapped my fist twice against my left breast. As a retainer serving the Arctic's family, Lord Daniel was going to be on the front lines, fighting a far more dangerous battle than any of us soldiers. We won't fail, he replied, tapping his chest twice in response. Together with the other soldiers, I readied the waist we gathered and got in position. There's the ship, I said. The ones from Lionsking were big and therefore easy to recognize. We kept a close eye on the passengers as they disembarked. I see silver cloth. They're wearing something under the capes. Are those dogs with them? Just as we'd been warned, some of the passengers are wearing silver cloth. That must have been the intruders hoping to target the Archducal family mine's enemies. Come on already. Wait, dogs? No! Those are either, dang it, what were they called? Wolf Daniels, whatever the heck they called, or those are Turnish Fawns. Oh, please tell me they're not Turnish Fawns. They'll be screwed if they are. They were moving so slowly, it was driving me crazy. Lecco, the soldier standing in wait beside me, twitched with impatience. Don't dump it yet, Lecco, I said, urging him to resist his temptation while fighting back my own. If we strike too early and miss, we won't get another chance. These are nobles we're dealing with, remember? They can use high beasts and magic. Our job is to drop waste on them and tear away their silver clothes. Make it count. The last thing we wanted to do was get cocky and start assuming we could take these nobles on ourselves. They had tools and magic we commoners could never dream of. Fourth bell rang as our silver-cloth visitors reached the gate. By some strange coincidence, or maybe even fate, the city had marked the start of our battle. I'm going to protect the city and my whole family with it. Finally! That one was a long one! Jesus Christ! Oh, I think they're going to realize that airway is closed off. Follow your heart. Oh, great. Why is Detlinde having to be in this one? I wonder, how long will it take me before your mana runs dry, Detlinde mused aloud. I do hope I can obtain the Grutershite before then. She shot me one last glance before leaving the room, her shoes clacking on the hard ground as she went. Oh, this is Ferdinand's point of view, okay. To that fool, neither the royal decree nor my status as an Archduke family member meant anything. I should have never operated into the assumption that she was a noble. Not when she only ever followed her own desires. Had I accounted for that, I probably would have had the upper hand right now. I could have taken her to a back room, stripped away her mana-resistant silver clothes, removed her veil that presumably had silver thread woven into it, and incinerated her Veronica-esque face with the hottest fire magic I could produce. Yes! Yes, do it! Do it! Please! Please! To my frustration, that option was no longer available to me. Letizia had struck me with poison. It must have been especially potent, as despite my antitoxin and the protection circles within Rosemind's charms, my body was completely paralyzed. Yeah, it was effective, because it would have been an instant death for you had she not done that. Detlinde did call it instant death poison. I understood that Letizia had been manipulated, but that did not stop me from feeling sincerely disappointed in her. I said to her that Roswitha's disappearance was most likely the result of a scheme, and that she should stay well away from it, but her ignorance had led her to oppose me anyway. By falling for the enemy's trap and participating in a murder, she had gone from being someone who deserved an education but needed to be shielded from a malice to a fool who ignored orders and acted without rhyme or reason. This is useless. Completely useless. Letizia's young age was no excuse. Even as a child, Wilfrid had been punished for entering the Ivory Tower without permission and for attempting to rescue a prisoner. The duchy had been caught in a schism at the time, but that did not change the fact that he had nearly been disinherited over it. Letizia was a member of Arensbach's archducal family. To make matters worse, she had come here without parents and stepped straight into the firing line of two powerful enemies eager for her elimination. Her position had been precarious enough already. What punishment would she receive for murdering her tutor by royal decree, an archducal family member from another duchy? Even in the best scenario, she would not be the only one executed. Never have I seen an archducal family member so tragically unaware. Just how many retainers will need to be punished alongside Letizia, and what about the nobles of her faction who would be deemed guilty by association? It was impossible to calculate how much damage this whole incident would cause. Detlinde and Georgine would not give up such a great opportunity to wreak havoc. As for Roswitha, she would most likely be killed to ensure her silence. There was no chance she would ever be freed, and even if she were, she would return to find that her imprisonment had driven Letizia to commit murder and then be punished alongside her. I could not even begin to imagine the depths to which her despair would take her. In truth, my heart went out not to Letizia, but to her retainers. They had been doomed entirely by their lady's foolish actions. Were Eckert and Justice able to escape, I wonder? Thinking about Letizia's retainers made me ponder what was happening to my own. If they stayed here in Arensbach, chances were that they would be swept up in this whole mess. If worse came to worse, they might have Letizia's crimes forced on them as well. The most I could do now was pray their name stones had reached them, and that they would save themselves by undoing the vows. They would probably deduce the circumstances, but they had no hope of reaching me here, and even if they explained my situation to Ehrenfest, it would be impossible to save me. I simply hoped that those who had always been so loyal to me would go to spend the rest of their lives at peace in their home duchy. Tomorrow at noon, I would say. That was when my mana would run out. Would Eckert and Justice make it to Ehrenfest and free Lost from Stone before then? That was my main concern. Dang, you have a lot of mana, dude. I do not fear the danger. Please bring me with you, Losfam had said to me, only to be told to stay in my estate and protect my belongings. I had intended to summon him with all my luggage once I was made more secure, but that would no longer be happening. Was he going to resent me for failing to keep our promise? On second thought, I suppose Eckert and Justice will return to enact revenge. Yeah, they would. They were actually planning on it! My retainers aside, almost everyone would rejoice at the news of my death. There was Lindy and Georgine, of course, but also the Zend who had ordered my move to Ahrensbach in the first place. The royals and sovereign nobles would surely be relieved to hear that I would no longer use Rosemine to search for the Grudgeschite as they all suspected. Rosemine would mourn me, but ere Wehrman had ordered her to kill me to finish her book of Messinora, she would most likely be relieved to obtain the missing section without having to endure the torture of us fighting each other. Dead young woman had an unusually low tolerance for death, but the entire country would collapse without my demise. She was a passionate lover of books, so maybe she had pieced together my intentions for the maximal quality Fey paper. And warning Sylvester is no longer an option. It had been Georgine's idea to manipulate Letizia, meaning she was the reason for my current predicament. No doubt she was already on her way to Ehrenfest under the guise of attending spring prayer. The intelligence was missing from the letters Eckert and Justice were trying to deliver. I wondered whether they would figure out the truth on their own. I asked if you brought to me by the goddess of time, protect Sylvester and protect Ehrenfest. I recalled my father's last words to me. Despite having come to Ahrensbach to keep an eye on Georgine, I was unable to warn Sylvester of the greatest threat she now posed. At once that voice in my head changed to that of Veronica. What use does the Archducal family have for a worthless member who produces no results? Raising them sounds like a waste of resources. Their life would not be valuable in the slightest. Veronica had been correct, it seemed. I was useless when it mattered most. No, you were not! Forgive me, Father. I could not protect Ehrenfest and Sylvester as you asked. One by one faces came to mind and then faded. My vision blurred and my consciousness slipped away. Even keeping my eyes open became an insurmountable task. My only option was to stop resisting the pain, and with that my entire body relaxed. Oh, he's that cold. I had closed my eyes only for a moment, but it felt like an eternity had passed. Stranger still, I noticed the ceaseless pull of my mana being sucked away had suddenly stopped. No, not just that. I had been enveloped in someone else's mana. My mana name has been stolen. That was when she did it! That was when she did it! Oh, shoot. How stole your name? Being enveloped in another's mana was not a new experience for me. Unlike when I gave my name to my father, however, there was no pain during this binding. The mana surrounding me was the same as the mana that had protected me when Leticia's poison had activated Rosemine's charm. I technically had entrusted my name stone to Rosemine by hiding it within the false bottom of a bag, but the stone had the name Quinta carved into it, not Ferdinand. Moreover, she was strongly against taking names and bearing the burden of other people's lives. She would never have considered stealing the name of someone she did not know. Before I could recover from my shock, Rosemine's voice resounded through my mind. Don't give up, Ferdinand. I'm coming to save you, and there's nothing that can stop me. Live. The fool! What kind of an order was that? I tried to resist on an unconscious level and was immediately overcome with pain, not from the poison, but from a strange sensation as if my master was choking me with her mana. I grunted out my acknowledgement of her command. Fine, I will use any means at my disposal to live. The moment I accepted Rosemine's order, the pain disappeared. The feeling of my name being bound was instant, and despite not having seen who had stolen my name, I was already being told what to do. On top of that, my acknowledgement had been accepted without me needing to say anything. A mere grunt had sufficed. The terror of having my name stolen made me want to sigh, but all that came out was a labored breath. I am to blame for sending her my name stone to begin with. The justice must have given her a push. Rosemine was strongly against taking other people's names, but Justice always had his ways. He knew that she could use her mana to delay my demise, and that the girl in question loathed letting others die even more than she did taking their lives into her own hands. It would have been easy to convince her. No doubt she had taken my name with the sole intention of saving me. Rosemine would order me to live when the gods want one of us to die. I suspected she had not even considered that. She could have simply waited, and my wisdom would have become hers. If we both lived, we would eventually need to fight to the death as the gods demanded. Iwerman must have told her the same thing he had told me. Yet she was still prioritizing my life. As always, I could describe her only as a fool, who acted according to her emotions. Well, duh. At the same time, though, I was relieved to know she did not want my death. She still saw me as family, or at least to some degree. Still, she commands me to live, does she? As the shock of my name being taken faded, so too did my consciousness. Glimpses of the past started to wander into my mind. You will be able to live as you please. You have the freedom to follow your heart. Find a dream and shape your own life, said the woman who had given me the name Ferdinand in the Adulter Sevilla. I had been told she was my mother, but at the time, the very concept had been foreign to me. In my mind, she had also only ever spoken to me on that one occasion. During that one exchange, my mother had told me I would be able to lead my own life, but I had not known what it meant to live freely or to have dreams. My whole existence had been spent preparing to become a Faystone, and not once had I considered what I could do if that fate never came. Lady Ermhilde, what is a dream? I had asked upon being moved to Ehrenfest. She was my guardian at the time of my father's paternal half-sister. She had passed away before my baptism, but if she had lived, she would have been my father's second wife and my noble mother. Lady Ermhilde had touched her pale, loosely bound hair and thought. It is a desire for things to be a certain way. Is there anything you wish for, Ferdinand? I think I can live freely now with my own dreams, but what are my dreams? It sounds to me like you do not have any at the moment. You may not know them now, but you will one day. Once you have found the things you desire, live to make them come true and protect them. Lady Ermhilde had answered in a kind voice and tried to stroke my cheek as she answered, but her movements were somewhat awkward. She was not used to interacting with children. Smiles had been such a rare sight for me at the time that I recalled staring into her golden brownish eyes, awestruck. In the end, what did I desire? Maybe because I was on the border between life and death, memories that had previously been pushed to the farthest reaches of my mind resurfaced. I had been with Lady Ermhilde only for a short while, so I did not remember much about her. For the most part, I recalled what people had told me about her once she was gone. Lady Ermhilde, why am I here? Because someone wishes for you to live, Ferdinand. My own wish is for you to keep living, grow up healthy, and one day meet that person. I still did not know whom Lady Ermhilde had wanted me to meet. I guess the person you would fall in love with or something? Maybe? But the memory of our exchange had always been vivid in my mind. It had served as a great source of comfort when Veronica had continually called me a blight on Ehrenfest. In the indulgence of Villa had been nothing more than a face stone. I suspect I will die without ever seeing this person Lady Ermhilde wanted me to meet. Don't know if you already met that person. As my mind continued to wander, I suddenly noticed that the magic circle was draining less of my mana. That was probably because Rosemine had ordered me to live and was surrounding me with her own mana. As frustrated as I was by that my name had been stolen, this certainly would delay my death in some degree. Though I would not consider that as a reason to be hopeful. It would mean a slightly extended lifespan, but not my survival. The poison had yet to be completely removed from my system, yet so I was still unable to move. I was more likely to be finished off than saved, especially when the only ones currently capable of entering this place were Letizia, Detlinde, and Georgine, those who wished me nothing but harm. If only I could move my hands. Although my staff was sealed, I still had magic tools at my disposal. Rosemine's charms also had a purification circle. If it could somehow stop the mana flow out of me, and change my tools, I would actually be able to purify the poison. I tried to move my hands. They merely trembled, but it must have worked to some degree. The magic circle began draining even less of my mana. It was a decent start, but alas, that was the end of my resistance. My vision grew darker until the world around me had completely disappeared. I awoke to a sudden flood of water. Oh, Rosemine's doing. The merciless waves swallowed me and threw me up. That's there! There! It would have moved him! Threw me up in the air, leaving me unable to breathe. It had all happened so suddenly that I couldn't even begin to comprehend what was going on. Have they at last come to finish me? That was my initial thought, but the water lasted only a few moments before it disappeared. I came out the other end dry as a bone, which meant it must have been a wash-in. Even in my dazed state, I was still able to piece together that much. As I coughed and sputtered, I realized the caster had probably been trying to cleanse the room of poison. It was much easier to breathe all of a sudden. And that sound... Is that sound? I could tell that someone had entered, but I could neither move my head nor open my eyes. My ears must have been damaged as well. I was having to rely solely on the vibrations of what I discerned to be footsteps. The weight of each one made it clear that this was no mere child. This would mean that it was Detlinde or Georgine, I suppose. Whoever it was, my executioner moved me before pouring some liquid into my mouth. My hand was no longer on the replenished circle, and at once mana flowed into my magic tools and charm instead. Any last trace of the old poison were cleansed, and whatever poison had just been administered to me would soon meet the same fate, assuming it was of the normal variety. A tense moment passed as I waited for all to leave my system, feeling my mana flow through me once again, until another more intense liquid was poured into my mouth. What is this poison? I spat out the vile liquid, and using as much strength as I could muster, moved my wooden body enough to pin down my... Are you even awake at this point? Are your eyes even open? Because I don't even think he even noticed who it was. To pin down my attacker, Rosemond had ordered me to live. I needed to eliminate any threats by whatever means necessary. Who are you? I demanded, narrowing my blurry eyes in an attempt to focus them. I could not tell which of my three potential attackers had come to finish the job. Looking back at me were two wide golden eyes. The word Rosemine reached my ears, and while it was ever so faint, the voice did sound somewhat similar to hers. The figure before me looked nothing like her, though, and above all else, Rosemine would never have been granted access to this room in the first place. Impossible. Rosemine is only this tall, I said, still on guard but trying to relax the chains I had intended to choke her with. My body did not move as I wanted, however. It would be a while yet before the purification process finished, as my still pained gasp made apparent. What? How is it impossible? The woman shouted, sitting up so suddenly that she drove the chain into her own neck. Ugh. Yes, that certainly is Rosemine. The moment I was convinced of that fact, the retention and suspicion that had driven me disappeared. I flopped onto my side and stared at Rosemine, who had tears in her eyes and was spluttering to no end. She had changed too much for a basic remark such as, "You certainly have grown." It looked like she had aged 4 or maybe 5 years all at once, which was anything but a normal growth spurt. She had also become so beautiful that I struggled to believe my eyes. It was a transformation so abnormal that it could no longer be understood through human reasoning, so the gods must have intervened. Doi! It was clear as day that a wereman favored Rosemine over me. Yeah, 'cause she went there through the actual way you're supposed to go to get the Book of Messinora. You just bombarded it with the frickin' magic circle with face stones. Something must have happened during her trip to the Garden of Beginnings that would explain this almost artificial beauty she had suddenly acquired. It appeared to me that her features were perfect in the most literal sense, lacking any of the distortion or asymmetry that normally developed over the course of one's life. I could only sigh that she would sully this literal gift from the gods with her unseemly behavior. "Have you lost your mind?" I asked. "You fool?" Her sudden decision to move straight into the chain that stretched across her neck had not been the only issue. From visiting a wereman to rescuing me against my will to accessing this room through some means I could not even begin to fathom, her every move exposed her as a fool. Look, I already know that I took things a little too far. Please don't get all sanctimonious about it. Even now, she was so oblivious to her own faults that she described her actions as a little too far. Any lingering feelings of aggression faded as I realized she was completely unchanged on the inside. Still, there could be no doubting her identity. Rosemine was so dense that she had yet to realize I had deliberately attempted to choke her. She was also wasting her beauty and stubbornly refusing to give up on anything she cared about. There were all grave flaws for a noblewoman to have, but for some reason they did not displease me. I wonder why. "Is it because you can't move that you feel the need to run your mouth?" she asked. "I run my mouth because of the manner in which you administered the antidote. And if you want me to take your complaint seriously, I would advise wiping that great big smile from your face." Despite my warning her time and time again to keep her emotions hidden, Rosemine was as easy to read as ever. She was clapping her cheeks at the moment, trying to regain some composure, but it was doing very little to help her case. "I'm glad you've recovered enough to grumble," she said, her golden eyes wrinkled in an ear-to-ear grin. Would I have rejoiced if she had lost that straightforward stare during her growth spurt? "As soon as you're better, I expect some head pats, your sweetest, very good, and maybe even some hugs. You can also pinch my cheeks if you want, so please get better soon." I could not bring myself to critique her unusual display of simultaneously crying and smiling. It seemed that I cared more about her unchanged personality than her beautifully developed appearance. And this is the person I'm expected to kill to complete my Book of Messinora? I recalled the wereman's instructions and returned to my senses. There had been some things one simply could not escape from. "In the first place," I said, "there was no need for you to come to my rescue. Justice must have given you my message, so why are you here? To what end did you come? It would have been far more intelligent of her to let me die, thereby saving Juergensmit with as few deaths as possible. That was what a wereman desired, and it would have been much easier on Rosemine than an outright duel to the death. And yet she had never even considered leaving me to die." I mean, who cares?" she asked, cocking her head at me. "There's no point in saving Juergensmit if you're not in it. Isn't it super obvious?" I was at a loss for words. She had delivered that outrageous remark as though it were the most natural thing It is the most natural thing in the world for her to say. It had not slipped my mind that she had said I was like family to her and threatened to save me if ever I ended up in danger, yet her declaration that she would prioritize me over the entire country was hard to process. The greater duchies, the sovereignty, the royal family, and even the gods themselves. "I would make an enemy of the entire world to save you," she said. "I do not believe you said the gods before." In truth, it was a frivolous detail. Juergensmit was home to her commoner family and her friends, the people she cared about more than anything. I had not fathomed she would prioritize my life over their safety. Someone who is merely like family should never be placed above one's true kin. Is that not how it goes? My father had called me his son, but prioritized Veronica, Sylvester, and Bonifacius over me. Sylvester likewise called me his brother, but cared more about Florencia and his children. Even after our father's death, he had determined it best for me to enter the temple, not Veronica. I had always considered such favoritism the height of normalcy, so it seemed obvious to me that Rosamund would treat those who were only like family the same as everyone else did. Yes, I was special to her as a noble, and if something were to happen to me, she would rampage to save me as though we were related. But it had never even crossed my mind that she might continue to care for me when her true family's safety was on the other end of the scales. My calculations never accounted for this. No, dip, dude, she's abnormal. What do you expect? Oh, is this your first time hearing that part? Rosamund asked. My apologies, but that's just how it is. Now let's come up with a way to complete the Book of Messenora without either one of us having to die. The fool did not even acknowledge my emotions as she continued to joyfully babble on about a Wehrman. She even came out with the truly ridiculous idea of pouring mana into the country gates to buy ourselves more time. I doubt any Wehrman had even considered the possibility that we would refuse to kill each other over the Book of Messenora. They most likely considered it a given that mere humans from Jurgensmith would obey his commands. Still, is Rosamund not following her desires too carelessly? I was equal parts exasperated and enthusiastic about seeing the shock on Wehrman's face when Rosamund's plans came to light. My lips curled into a slight grin, and it was then that I remembered what Lady Irmhilda had told me. Once you have found the things you desire, live to make them come true and protect them. Living in accordance with my own desires might not be a bad idea after all. This time I interpreted the words differently. Perhaps because my strength was returning to me, I attempted to bend my fingers, conscious that the charm and antidote were gradually restoring me. As I calculated how long I would need to wait before I could merely move freely again, I started to contemplate the most efficient way to destroy Arensbach. Oh, the afterword! Finally! Okay. Here's... oh god, they're all getting himself up... the guy in overwhelming lust for battle. We simply cannot take the risk of sending our knights home while they are so worked up. Yeah, they'd probably rampage. Yeah, I see that now. His devotion to his lord... his lord aside, Eckert does kind of love his siblings. In order of preference, Cornelius is number 1, surprisingly. Lambert's number 2. Rosamund's number 3, and Nicholas is dead last. But then, I will save Lord Ferdinand by any means necessary. And then Rosamund goes straight to number 1 on his list. Well said, dear sister. Cornelius just went from number 1 to number 2. Lambert's now at number 3, and Nicholas is still dead last. And Ferdinand, always suspicious. Upon waking up after being poisoned, he's exhausted. Rosamund is right here before him. But is this truly her? Ferdinand! And she's got a cat ear! She's so adorable! And a tail! It's wagging! She's like, I love books! This is all wrong. What's all wrong? And confirmation. You became Arensbach's Ob, and then turned the duchy into your playground. Playground? It was the ocean and fish you so desire, not to mention the new wide variety of fish, and she's kind of fantasizing about all the fish. But still, this is just... You could even create that library city you proposed during one of our lessons. Oh, I got her attention. Is this like a dream? I'm actually drooling, but I'm still playing right into his hands. This really is my Rosamund. Yep, that's your Rosamund, alright. The Rosamund you knowing. I don't know. Anyway. Dang, that's a long one! I might have to cut it!